thought I'd lost my hook. My favorite one. Second favorite. I guess second favorite. Just dropped my first one. Okay, here's my first favorite hook. It's a 5.75. I can't remember if it's a boy hook. Boy. It's kind of like the what is it? Clover or more hooks, but just a slightly different. It's a 5.75. I really like the head on it. If you're doing blankets, it really eliminates a lot of tangling that occurs. Okay, let me see if I can get propped up. This recliner sits me in such a way that I slide. Okay, I've been working on Woodstock and all his 10,000 body parts. And I have decided I'm going to do his wings and tail and this fluffy to go along with him. Just to add something to him because he's looking rather drab, I must say. Also, I'm working on a frog because I needed a breaker, like a breathing crochet something in between all these others. I've been sick, y'all. How y'all doing? I think Ashley, I was just talking to you. Janae. Sanford. I have been, if y'all wonder where I've been, I have been, my mastoid got a little sick on me, and I need to check on Gypsy because her mastoid had been a little sick on her too. And I spent several days just trying to recuperate. And I'm much better. Everything's draining now. I feel much better. Yesterday, I've spent days in the bed. I didn't get to go to the baby shower yesterday because I was just starting to come out of it, but I still look like death. And I still was not, I didn't have enough pumpkin yesterday that go anywhere. I certainly didn't to drive myself, and David had to work, and Kim had to go early to set stuff up, so I wasn't like going to go and be able to sit there for a whole big time. But she did stop and get all of her daughter's crochet presents. I made them a big toddler-sized dragon snuggler for the baby's room, so the baby will have it when he gets older. I made a smaller baby blanket. It's going to be easier to get on and off the car seat. And then I'm going to start working on a bigger one for the crib that I also fit on a toddler blanket. And then I'm going to, probably from there, when we get to twin size beds and up, I'm probably just going to be quilting because I'm not going to crochet anything above a crib or toddler bed. I'm just going to go, I'll just quilt and go down to mom's. But I was just peaked and puny and sick and not feeling well. And every time my mastoid gets messed up when these rain things come through, it takes me forever to get over this. Yeah, my mom is a constant quilter. I've done lots of quilts. I don't keep them as much as my mom does. Like I've got a lot of quilts from my mom and my grandma, my great grandma. But I don't keep the ones I make for some reason. I don't know why. I just don't. I've got one that I either need to repair or I'm going to have to sadly lay it to rest. And it was made by my Nanny Clara. Was she any relation to me? Absolutely not. She was my Nanny Clara. And I've got it on a quilt rack. And I know, if I wash it one more time, it may disintegrate upon me. So I may, it may just have to be laid to rest. But man, it hurts to, have something that somebody you loved made for you that you can't. But now it's had a rough life. I've had it since I was 18, 17, 18. That's a long shelf life, y'all. Also, I covered yesterday. I hadn't done anything in a long time, like many, many, many days. Mom's got some appointments coming up at the end of this month. I've got some coming up the first of the month, and then Dad's got another heart procedure the first week of March. And so I've just been resting, kind of figuring I would try to go with Mom to her ortho appointments to prep for her hip surgery, and let Dad stay home and rest, and then go to another one of my endo appointments to see what we're going to do with my thyroid. I can't even talk today. And I think me and Mom are going to like totally go hit the dollar stores because there is a brown Premier yarn it's just at the Dollar Tree. And we don't have a Dollar Tree anymore. And when we did have it, they never had yarn. But there's a brown yarn that I love to make those Juicy Booty Bigfoots out of. And they don't sell it anywhere else. I can't find it anywhere else. So I'm going to go, and if they have that brown yarn, I'm going to buy a ton of it. And if they don't, I'll probably buy a ton of the other stuff because it's really good. It's Premier yarn. It's just the smaller skeins and like the over purchased colors from the seasons before that they lot out to the Dollar Tree. So it's really good yarn. I like it a lot. It's very plush and soft. It is kind of, it is Chanel, so it will kind of, when you're sewing and when you're tying it off, it will kind of poof everywhere, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad. My audio sounds really good. Listen, it just takes it in spells. I have no idea. And I think a lot of it is I'm just so rural that it just is if I get a good link up somehow or not. I don't understand. And I'm I'm going to be at Mom and Dad's way more here soon. Way more again. Probably full time for most of the late spring and summer. I'm backwards today. Can you tell I've been sick? And then that sometimes I struggle, especially with the lives, because it just depends. I'm down there in the hole in the holler, and it just depends on if I can get a good signal or not. There's really no good signals where I live, honestly. They keep putting up towers, but they don't seem to work to help the signals my phone gets. Can't imagine why. Oh, Lord. Yeah, we don't have, I only have Walmart to buy yarn from here. So if we have to go to a specialist appointment, we have to go to one of the big cities. I whistled like that beaver on that cartoon. If we have to go to one of the big cities, I normally, me and Mom both take advantage to stop at the crafting stores and the Dollar Trees. And as long as we have enough energy and our legs are going, then we're going to stop because we have to pay shipping. Even on Amazon, I can't get good enough prices most of the time. Every once in a while I can find a good deal, but most of the time I can't get good enough prices, even though I have Amazon Prime. I can't get enough good prices to justify unless I buy it in huge bulk. And I don't always need huge bulk unless it's like specific colors. Sometimes I just want to try something new. And I don't want to have to buy enough to justify a big order, And so we run amok on those days and try to run into the Hobby Lobbies. We don't have a Michael's anywhere near us. We've got a few Hobby Lobbies and a couple of little yarn stores, and then the Dollar Trees have some. I'm telling you, the Premier yarns the Dollar Trees carry, the Chanel, are really nice. I'm not going to turn my nose up at them. They're really nice. They make the prettiest. That's what I made Harlan and Hank out of, if you remember my first two Bigfoots. Now, the big extra large Juicy Booty is made out of that really soft blanket yarn. That's easy you can spot clean. And he's still on Dave's Etsy store if anybody wants him. He's giant. He's as big as that Snoopy almost. But I'm working on a Kiss My Butt Frog because I needed a breaker crochet project in between all the ones I've been doing. And I'm waiting on one more delivery of a cotton yarn for my friend. And my friend's name is Pandora. She sent me some of her kitchen towels to add the toppers to, like her grandma's were. And she sent me her grandma's for an example to follow. And I left them in the USPS box. And it was so funny because last night I have not been up doing a whole lot because I've just been so puny. I've only done what I've basically had to do. And then I've just tried to heal and sleep. And I got up and I was looking through that box of the towels. And I got up and I knocked it over and I went, oh no, I knocked over Pandora's box. And I had to stop and laugh for like 5 whole minutes. Because it's just a phrase you never think you're going to say in your whole life. And actually, it's, it was Pandora's box. So I had to laugh at that for a while. But that tickled me. So I got a good laugh yesterday. That was like the first time I knew I must be feeling better. Today I feel a whole lot better, but I'm still taking it easy on myself. Last night, all I did, I slept all day yesterday. Once Kim picked everything up, I slept all day. And last night I got up, and the first thing I noticed was when I looked in the mirror, I looked so haggard. Of course, I've not colored my gray in a long time. I can't use my to match my auburn anymore because it makes my gray look, like fire engine red, And so I had gotten some dark chocolate reddish brown, and my gray was really irritating me. It makes me look sick because of my skin color doesn't look good when it fades out around my face. And I got up and I put box dye on my hair, sat in silence when I ate my dinner that David brought to me after he got off work last night. No, this was Valentine's night. This was Valentine's night. And I just sat there in silence, ate the dinner he brought me. And went and showered, washed off all the color, dried my hair, and went back to bed, went back to sleep. Because I've just been so sick. I've just been so sick. Yeah, too busy sneaking other people intrusive signals. Yeah, it's absolutely what they're doing. Yeah. Okay, I'll send you a picture of that Bigfoot because there's like a tan brown. There's a tan brown, a cream brown, and then there is like an apricot color I use for the feet. And they're hard to find. When you do find them, you can find them in bulk because they've lotted out, a whole store. But there's dry spells when you can't find them. I'll send you a picture of that Bigfoot and you can look at the colors. But now I'm going to be going later this month, here in about a week, with Mom down to her ortho appointment. And sadly enough, one of the people I used to supervise back in the day, he actually was, he had a twin. Both of them kind of had that twin spoken language. They were raised very backwoods, bless their heart. He had developmental issues. He was slow. He was sweet. He wasn't mean. He was just raised in such a way that by the time the rules could sink in, his way of life was established, and then all the little infractions began stacking up on him, and I had to send him back because he just kept getting little infractions, and the judge was done with him, and he sent him back. And I was like, listen, if you come out on parole, we'll give it a shot. But then sadly, with my health, I wasn't there by the time he got a parole option. He ended up having to go and flatten his sentence. He was released about a week or a little over a week ago. And of course, families don't have enough money to run to these prisons across the state to pick their loved one up. So they normally just buy them a bus ticket, or sometimes the prison will buy them a bus ticket. So they'd gotten him a bus ticket from Nashville to the Knoxville area with like 2 stops in between. He only had like $4 to his name. And his family was going to try to run to Knoxville and pick him up. And that was the plan. That was the plan. Finally, he didn't show up anywhere for days and days and days. Greyhound would not even give them the time of the day. They had filed a missing persons report with the police, but then the police kind of fumbled the ball and it wasn't showing up on all the computer systems. I think they just took the report and didn't actually enter the report. Which I'm sorry, there's no reason for that. That really irritated me. That's one of them half-butt job things that you just don't do when you work in that field. And finally, Greyhounds, began letting them look at footage of the stops, the stop areas. And he did not get off at the first stop. So he had to get off at one of the next 2. But sadly, the next 2 stops were closer to where I live, actually, and had really horrible camera systems, and they couldn't make out heads or tail. But there's someone in the Knoxville area that swore they saw him, one of the security guards that works for some of the shelters over there. They swear that they saw him walking. And it may just be that he doesn't, like, the prison gave him a bus ticket and his $4 that was in his pocket when they, had picked him up. And he may not have talked with his family before release because he'd been there for quite a while. And who knows if they had written to establish this? Who knows if the institutional parole officer had notified him in enough days to get letters back and forth to his family? And sometimes families in this area don't have home phones or cell phones. So it may just be that he, was in a place where he's like, I don't know their cell phones. I don't know. I've been in prison so long, I don't know anything about him. And he's just trying to do what he can to get back home in the only way he knows how, which is, taking it slow and trying to maneuver through a world that he is not very adept at, bless his heart. And I was so worried that he had probably gotten out and immediately somebody had identified him as an easy target. Because bless his heart, he's not evil. I know he's a criminal and I know he served time in the pen, but he's not evil. He's just a very bad decision maker because he doesn't have all the faculties to do so correctly. Man, I've been worried about him. So finally someone said, oh yeah, and it was a security guard. We've seen him. So we feel a little bit better, but we still, nobody can find him. And so I've had that on my plate. Been a lot of weather go through my daughter's area. I've had that on my plate. I've been sick. Didn't get to go to this baby shower because my health, that's knocked me down. Had a close friend of the family pass away. That's kind of knocked me down. Even though he had been sick for a while, we were all kind of anticipating it. It's still hard to, watch the family grieve and stuff. And it's just difficult. We've lost a couple of family friends here in the last little bit. It's been kind of difficult because they come in spurts, and they certainly have. And of course, then I get sick. I pretty much just have to detach from everyone and everything. Like, if you have various ways to reach me, and if needed me, you could reach me. But otherwise, I've just been hibernating and healing and doing the bare minimum needed to be done because I've got to heal, because we've got a lot of health stuff for mom and dad coming up. And then at some point, I'm going to try to find the time to radiate my thyroid and shut him down because he ain't playing right with me, and I'm mad at him. So we're just going to tell him no. Hey, Seven, I'm better. My mastoid got sick there for a few days, and we all kind of freaked out a little bit, but it's healing now. So I've kind of learned how to deal with it now, because it's like my thyroid. It gets a little hateful at times too. And then I felt so bad for so many days. And every time I get up, I look so haggard, and I had so much gray starting to show. And when I tried to put my red back on my hair, because I do have like an auburn cast, it just looks fire engine danger cone, orange. And so I ordered this chocolate brown, and I'd gotten up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirrors many times, and just I looked so sick and haggard that when I finally got energy last night, I got up and slapped my hair dye on, sat at the was it last night? Yeah, it was last night. I'm lost. I'm in a time warp. And I slapped hair dye on, sat at the kitchen table in silence with hair dye on my head, and ate the supper that David brought. He went to town and after work and got us both dinner, so I wouldn't have to cook. It was sweet. We don't really do Valentine's Day, but I thought it was sweet. He didn't want to make me cook, so that was sweet. And then I washed it off. My hair, showered, dried my hair, and went back to bed and slept some more. So I'm feeling a lot better today. Trying to get some stuff done to get back on track. I've got Woodstock almost done. I'm going to make his wings and his tail out of a fluffy yarn to give him some personality. But he's going to be tiny. Well, he's still appropriate. He's going to be appropriate ratio sized for the cartoon to Snoopy. It's just, he looks like a unicorn. I've only got one feather on his head. But it's being the pattern writer. You can tell that this is like an old school crochet pattern, which is fine, but it's been a learning curve in some ways, because about every 10, 15 years they create like new dialogue for the patterns, new ways of expressing certain stitches that they could just continue to call what they called them, but no. So I've had to do a little bit of research and be like, what do they mean here? Because that, the last 30 years this pattern's been out, it could mean one of four things. So I've had to go and look that up. But I've learned a lot, and that's helped with the other patterns that I'm looking at and wanting to try because they're older patterns too. I want to make some floor turtle seat things for my grandbabies so they can sit on their little turtles on the floor and watch cartoons in the living room and, pack them around. And it looks like a little sea turtle sitting on the ground, and then they just sit on them, watch TV, rest, nap, take a chill, take a little chill session with mama in the living room. And, sometimes if you give a toddler a place to sit still, they will. So that's my whole motivation there. My daughter has got twins, if y'all don't know, and there'll be 2 next month. And I'm just like, you need a nap, but I'm 9 hours away. And I wish I was there to give her nap time and rest time and breaks. And it's hard to be that far away from her. I did break down and get me a refurbished digital frame that they can send pictures to from phones. Do I hate technology? Yeah, but if it lets me see my grandbabies, am I going to use it? Oh, most definitely. Do I care if somebody on the other side may be looking at me through it? They deserve what they get. I am not attractive, so view and be warned. But it's nice because it'll chime when somebody sends you a picture. And literally, I'm going to be the proverbial Pavlov's dog because as soon as it chimes, I'm going to run to it to see what somebody sent me. I'm going to train myself. But it's gonna be nice, and it'll be less of a way to kind of, because now when I video call or I'm like, what are the munchies up to today, or toss me some pictures, I feel like I'm irritating her and getting them off schedule and stuff because they're at a very precarious age and they need to be on their schedule. And this way, she can just kind of keep me up in their day-to-day mischief, and we can kind of space out the video calls around their schedule a little bit better. So they're starting to get really talkative. So that's going to be my favorite phase, I believe, when they start talking to me because, yes, they're down in southern Georgia, almost Florida, but I'm going to teach them how to talk redneck. You better believe it. Now, their daddy talks kind of Louisiana-ish. And so they will probably have a very mixed dialogue. My daughter she's like me. She can cut it out for school and work. But every once in a while, when you get her mad, Appalachia will just, out it comes. So the kids will probably have a very colorful language. Not rude, but, just a mix of a lot. So looking forward to the next year to see how they grow on up. And she keeps them, they're very separate little individuals, and she's not really pushed the twin thing. So they don't have like the secret language and all that stuff. They're very well socialized and stuff. And she's done a really wonderful job with them. So I'm excited to see what they're up to in the next year. And as soon as mom and dad get well from these surgeries, we're going to try to run down and do another visit. We were going to try to go next month, but then all these surgeries kind of happened, and they need to happen. So we're just going to deal with them and go on. The frog. Let me catch up here for a second. A lot of our subs have got a lot going on right now. Everybody's got a lot going on right now. It's just a really hard time of year. I'm feeling better. I'm healing better than I used to. I found a better balance in life with this disorder. I went and dug up while I was sick in bed. I went because they told me last week about somebody that absolutely ripped me a new one on X, Twitter. I registered on Twitter, might have posted 7 times, and it just did not enamor me and walked away from it. And that was like in 2016, 17, 16. And I didn't remember my password or anything. Thank God it was still registered in the same email. And I went and fished around and got that back up so I could see people's rage with me on X, because I think it's freaking hilarious. It's amusing. Hey, listen, you don't get to where I've gone in life through my careers without, having a little bit of a gallows humor. And when people get really upset because I won't join in on behavior trains, and I will look up court paperwork before I speak about things, or I'll do backgrounds before I talk about things. And if you post something that's false, I most definitely will tell you that's not correct. People get really mad at me because I can read and because I research, and because when I have an opinion, it's normally very well founded. And I find that hilarious. I find, especially for older people, because I'm like, should you not understand the effort that goes in to making a well-rounded belief system? And should you not respect it when you do run into it? Should you not be able to identify it, even if you may not have, such clarity in your own life? At this age, do you not kind of see it shine in someone else's life? The answer is no. That they not all people can, and that's frustrating. But that's not my problem. They're adults. They got to work on it themselves. But if I need a giggle, I'm going to get a giggle. So I'm going to get a giggle. I know I'm me. I'm not. I'm just, you can learn a lot from why someone's mad at you and how they display that displeasure. And y'all know I'm a people watcher. I like to look at society and say, where are we going? What's the latest move we're all doing? What are we teaching each other? And even the older adults, we're not teaching each other anything useful. Hello, people, wake up. So people seem to get really mad about people that come on and talk about factual things now. Like if, you know, and they, I mean, if you can pull up a government website or a textbook or a peer reviewed journal entry about a 10-year-old test, that has been proven right 4 more times, they get really mad. And I'm like, why do you get really mad? It seems like, okay, well, that's the truth. We figured it out. You can, like, put a pin in that when it's done and move on to the next thing you're curious about. Curiosity is not what people have anymore. No. And not acceptance is not what even people want anymore. It's a dogmatic control. And it's like if I think something and then you show me the data and the research to prove it otherwise, I'm going to be like, wow. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to reevaluate everything I based on that data, because that seems like the right thing to do. My eyeballs itching so bad. I hate having colds and sinus crap. But they, other people don't look at it like that, I don't guess. So, but man, you can watch some people absolutely break down, and they'll have a huge beef with someone, and you're like, oh my god, what occurred for this to happen? Why do you hate this person so so much? And they would literally say something like, well, in 7th grade, she wore her hair in a side ponytail, and she knew that was my hairdo, and we've never been friends since. And I'm sitting there going, we're almost a half century old, right? You still wearing a side ponytail? Well, no, but in 7th grade. Oh, okay. And I'm sitting there going, I mean, I've seen, farm animals hold on to grudges, and they'll kick you 10 years later. But you would think that a human being would process through that a little bit. I mean, there's certain things you stay mad about, like the big things in life. You kind of stay mad about, and it teaches you how to deal with other people that try to put you in that position again. Completely valid. But if there's no validity, what are at the end of the day, when you grow up, what are you still mad about? Frustrates me. I guess it frustrates a lot of people. And then, by God Almighty, if you're mad at somebody and you're going to tell everybody they're a horrible, horrible human being, at least tell that person why you're going to say those things. Because if you go around for half a decade and you can't explain why you hate somebody. You just, in generality, say they did bad things to me, and you can't like do a bullet list of at least a few. Eventually, people are going to go, we're still there, like we're still not talking about that. We're because people sit on something for a while, they'll give you a little bit of leniency, and then they're like, well, we want to know how you came to this decision, to behave this way. And then when they don't see a good one, they kind of go, huh. And smart people go, well, that's how you're going to treat me if we have a disagreement. And they go, I'm going to be careful. And then the silly people go, well, I trust you. You're not going to treat me like that because we're friends. Famous last words. So, but I like to people watch. It tells us a lot about what we're teaching, especially the younger generations. What are they learning from us? Not anything well. Apparently, not even how to read. Apparently, cursive letters throw them completely off. How does cursive letters throw you completely off when they're so similar to the print letters? How can you not see that? My God, we had scientists that figured out Sumerian text, hieroglyphics, and you can't figure out cursive writing? Not buying it. Like I've seen younger YouTubers. After I'm sick, y'all know I can't talk. My brain goes too fast for my mouth. Normally it's the other way around. Not currently. But I've seen young YouTubers get letters from their fans, and it's fans that write in cursive, and they're like, I'll have to read this later and see what it says because I can't read cursive. Seriously? I don't understand. It does not compute. Analog clocks. Yes, it's all messed them up. They're lazy. It's not that they can't. It's that they're lazy. They're lazy, and they'd rather believe they can't do it than say, wait, no, this is not too bad. Let me sit here with it for a minute. I'll figure it out. I am at least happy to see, like, crochet and sewing and there's a lot of really interested younger people in these skills again. So that's nice. I turned my head too fast and made fluid move and about made myself dizzy. But I am getting better. So at least we're seeing a certain group of the younger people really shift back to some old core handiwork trades. It's really nice to see. But I had no problem shifting between print and cursive when I was little. It looked the same. Just a little frillier. It was like Grandma's little bantam chickens. It looked the same. Just dressed up a little bit. He had on his corduroy breeches. Grandma used to tell me those little chickens, those little silkies and stuff, they had on their corduroy breeches. I believed her for a long time in life. Till I caught one day, and he did not have on corduroy breeches. He had on feather pants. Do you know how long it took me to catch that chicken? A long time. Well, she may have just said that to make me chase after that chicken for like 5 hours that day to keep me busy. Now that I'm older, I realize my grandparents were a lot smarter than I thought. And it wasn't that they needed me to perform these tasks or that there was, such magical things on the farm. They sometimes created those magical things to keep me busy. Hey, hats off. It worked. Worked very well. Let's give this guy a butt crack. Where do I want it to go? I want it to go through here. My heat kicked on. And I need to fix the filter because it's going to... Oh, look, I'm playing Yarn Chicken. I thought I cut more than that. I did not. Smart, Elizabeth, smart. Never said I was smart, so I was educated. Two very separate things. Very separate things. I think when I get him finished, I'm just going to let David put him in the store. He's got a bunch of furs. I told him I'd take pictures of him, and I've been so sick I've not. He's going to try to take pictures of him tomorrow. He's off work. He's going to try to take pictures of him, get some fur on Etsy. I'm just going to, if I get him done, and I'm going to put synchros on this one, so it's not going to be like tiny kid proof. I'm gonna put the eyeballs on him, so he won't be like kid proof, but he'll be cute, and he'll just be a little kiss your butt frog. And I'm just gonna tell David to post him so if somebody wants him. Because I've had a couple of people ask me if I'm still making them, and I've had the yarn, and I just needed a little breather crochet something in between these bigger things I've been doing, and I can just sit down and crochet this and not even think about it and watch TV, and just kind of let my body enjoy watching something, enjoy making something, but without being taxed by either. It's very nice when you're sick. Good Lord, have mercy. I like to put my ends in really well, and sometimes I'm a little too overzealous with it. Then tonight after dinner, I'm gonna try to finish Woodstock. He's got a little juicy butt. That's cute. No matter how much I try to make him the same in the butts, their butts always turn out like different. I like to make their arms and legs, I kind of make all of them a little bit different. I've learned with people that have multiple kids to not make everything the same because little kids don't want everything the same. And so I've learned to kind of make things different. And but sometimes when I try to do things the same, it never works out. It never works out. Yeah, these little frogs are super adorable. They take a while to make because, their arms and legs are. I use a worsted weight yarn, and their arms and legs are terribly, terribly small and terribly long, and that is difficult to crochet. You're sitting there just crocheting you're like, when is this ever going to end? But now that I've gotten to where I can, like the possums, I just sit down and I just make them. I sit down and my hands start to move, and then, moments later I have legs and arms and a frog body, and so I just keep going. I don't mind making them now since it's got a little bit easier. I'm going to sew him on a little slightly differently, though, so that when he sits flat. I try things with all of them. So if you ever get a frog, they're never going to be exactly the same because I'll try new tactics, try new stitches, try, sewing them on in different manners so they sit differently. Had somebody on TikTok ask me if I'd make a unicorn the other day, and I was like, yeah. I said, if you get back with me before I use the yarn for something else, I can do it a little bit cheaper since I'll have the yarn on hand. But if I don't hear back from them, I'm going to use it for something else. Because I'm not going to the store anytime soon. I hate the store. Ordered lotion off of Amazon Prime the other day because I ran out, and I ain't even going to the Dollar General. No, I've been too sick. Amazon can just send it to me. I know it'll take longer to get here because I live in Podunk. I don't care. I don't care. I have been peaked and puny, and I ain't getting out. As soon as I am better, I'm going to go and see Stetson. I'm not contagious with anything. I'm just, my mastoid got infected and made me sick. As soon as I feel better, I'm going to go see little Stetson, my little bonus grandbaby. Because I got a bag full of goodies I've been collecting for him. Every time I go out and stop at a thrift store when I go to the doctor, I end up finding something adorable I just have to get for him because, that's what happens. And because he's still in the itty bitty phase, And so I've got a bag full of goodies that I need to get to him and his mommy and daddy. And I've just been really careful about being around him through flu and cold season. And then, of course, when I get sick, I kind of shut down. Here's one leg. I kind of shut down myself and have to stay home, so I don't get out a whole lot, especially during the winter. David's got 2 festivals in April. One of them is going to be a Viking event, which I really want to go to if my health is okay. And then spring planting festival at the Bandy Creek area, which I love that one too. That's like a, old school home culture thing. That's just like, it's just so close to home, and you see, you go there and you see people from your community and people from your family, and it's just a nice event. And then we've got repeat customers that, have seen David there so many times they come back. And that's where a lot of the tribes also send people the first of the year to kind of peruse my sticks and rattles before anybody else gets to them. So that's why I try to make a lot of those things in the winter too. And David has been collecting the beaver chewed willow sticks for me. And so, and I've got a lot of my jewelry stuff in and a lot of my jewelry stuff complete. So the jump rings and stuff I needed are getting in, and David's got the first round of tiny little bones done for me. I'm waiting for some antler pulls. He's got to drill the holes in the little antler dangles I need. And when I feel good, I can do that myself. But when I feel bad, he can do it for me. But I can't do anything with him until he gets the next run of bones sanitized and cleaned. So I'm just going to let him do that when he's out there doing that at the same time. Seemed like a good plan. And then when I sit down, I'll have like a week of like huge jewelry making. And hopefully that'll be the only time I have to make jewelry all year. I like jewelry. It's not my favorite thing to make. I like it though. I like to make the cultural stuff that holds something in it, My nose. Yesterday I about lost my voice, which was scary because I'm a talker. I like it when I see y'all know each other and have little sidebar conversations, and we have like a little family on here. Well, there's his two legs on his little butt. So when he sits on the shelf, you can do this, make him cross his legs. I like to cross their arms, and then sometimes I'll put him in a little Indian style. Most of the time I just let them hang, and I'll cross their legs like that. On the shelf, I'll cross their legs like that and cross their arms and make them sit there like a little grumpy. They're called a grumpy butt frog. I just call them kiss my butt frogs. But the pattern, I believe, was a grumpy butt frog. It's a very cute pattern. It's a very, very well written pattern. I've now gotten to where I have like specific pattern writers that I like above others. And I looked back on, I've now done a full year of crochet, and I was trying to remember everything I've made. There's no way. Gosh, how many possums have I made, y'all? I don't know. I don't even know how many of these frogs I've made. A lot. I've made a lot. I've gifted a lot of the possums to kids, like our friend that is the blacksmith at these events. He has a forge, and he helps people forge things, and it's like a little immersive experience for them. He's got 4 kids. I made them all a possum because I knew we'd be seeing them at events, and I made them all a possum, and I gifted them their possums when we saw them at one of our summer events. Because he doesn't always have the kids with him. It depends on how big the event is. If it's small enough, he can have them running around. He will bring them with him. And so I thought he would have them at this one event, and he did. And so I brought their possums, and I surprised them all with a possum. I had a lady deliver my groceries the other day, and I had this overwhelming, when I saw her and it said the name on my phone was bringing my groceries, and I saw her, it was just like, she does not have her children. Something's, I just had a feeling. And I said, do you have kids? And she just immediately kind of melted and said, yeah, but I don't have custody of them right now. And I've been trying, and she'd been trying for years, and she'd done everything. And she said, we're in the last of the court stuff. And she's like, me and my husband have both, gotten off paper, complied with everything, done all the treatment. She said, we're doing great. We're working hard. And she said, it's just, we understand it's a hard process, and we have to prove that, we're there. And I said, you're going to do it. And she was like, I hope so. She said, I'm about to lose hope. And she said, but I can understand, they picked up my kids when I was not taking care of them. She said, I can understand why they don't want to give them back. And she said, I can see it. And I said, well, that's part of your growth. I said, that's good. And you could tell she was just beating herself up, you could tell. And so I said, hang on just a minute. And I went and got her, was it a possum nature or a possum and something else? I can't remember. But it was like $70 for crochet, I know that. And I said, here. And she was like, oh my God, those are so cute. And I said, yeah. And she gets visits with her kids. And I said, next visit, I said, give them these. And they were all embroidered and kid safe, And she said, what do you want for them? And I said, no, just give them to your kids. And she said, well, why would you do that? And I said, because I believe you're going to get them back. I believe you're trying very hard. I believe you have fixed, what you knew were the issues. And I said, I think it's important that you see that somebody sees your work and believes that you're going to accomplish this. And she was just about to cry right off my front porch. And so I hope she does well. And I hope the kids like those. And I hope one day that, they are all back together and they're all doing well. And lessons are hard to learn. But if you do learn them, then you have the potential to have a very good life, even after, bad decisions. Bad decisions, you could fix. That's just a skill. So you can correct behavior because behavior is based on bad decision making. Most behaviors are learned. And you can change anything you learn as long as you want to, as long as you can identify it and want to. So I really hope she does well. I do. I have a really good husband. He's a sweetie pie. He's a good man. Probably the best decision in life I probably ever made because my first husband was probably the worst. And y'all, I don't tell you stuff in jest. I sat down and put pen to paper and in black and white made a list of the traits my first husband had, because if I could identify them and see them, then if I, ran across anyone else that tried to snooker me and I could sit down with that paper and identify any of those traits in that person, I would tell myself, absolutely not. I put pen to paper and I kept that thing tucked away in one of my old high school annuals for years and years and years. Matter of fact, I did not throw it away until about 2 years ago when I was cleaning out the book cabinet. And I thought, okay, no, we don't need it anymore. I'm good. And I really honestly did not think I would ever remarry. Just right after, all that, I was ready for just be mom and dad both because men had not earned I was just, What happened to me was so rude and unnecessarily mean. And it made me very angry. Very angry. And so I really did not think I would work through that. But I put myself in counseling and still going to school and stuff and got through all that and met David. It's not like we met. He kept, because my best friend was married to his brother. So we kept like seeing each other. And then he would start showing up in other places where he knew I'd be. And I didn't dog him. He was nice, and I couldn't tell him not to go to the fair, not to go to church, not to, but he just kept showing up. And just terribly sweet and nice. And I realized after, there was a day I had a hole in my radiator here. No, there's just crossed legs in his arms. Now you got to put his eyes on. I had a hole in my radiator I'm sweating, in my Mitsubishi Montero. Where'd my yarn go? The amazing disappearing yarn. And I had a hole in my radiator, my Mitsubishi Montero, and I hadn't, because my ex-husband never paid child support. I think he paid once in the whole time he was supposed to. Um, I had a hole in the radiator of my Mitsubishi Montero, and I had the money for the radiator, but not the money for the labor. And so my friend's husband, David's brother, she said, "Don't you worry about that. I'll have my husband come out and fix that." And I needed that fixed because my ex-husband had drug on and not signed the divorce paperwork, and I had to be down there the next week to, that he was supposed to have it signed, and we were supposed to have the last slap your gavel day. And I needed it fixed so I could travel. And well, lo and behold, the day he was going to fix it, he called and he said they're holding me over at work. And I was like, oh my God. He's like, don't worry. I called my brother. I told him about your situation. And I was like, well, gee, thanks. I was very not happy about that. He goes, he's going to come out and fix it for you. And I was like, it's great. We're just going to put it in the paper next week. Or, it just kind of made me mad. And I was like, that's fine. Whatever. It's like, that's fine. And so I'm like pacing the floor, waiting for somebody to show up to fix the radiator. And literally, trying to get the kids down for a nap, and he's at the back door, and I'm trying to get Haley down for a nap. Lane's the back door with his Snoopy fishing pole. It was a Snoopy fishing pole. And he wanted to go fishing at the pond. That's what he said. That's how he called it. He didn't have all his teeth. He had oral surgery, so he didn't have all his teeth. And I was like, I can't take you fishing right now. Your sister's going to have a nap. You're going to have to wait till this evening. There's nobody else here. Would you chill out, kid? He was being such a toddler and throwing a little, fit. And lo and behold, I heard a door, and I thought, okay, well, that guy's here to fix the radiator. Okay, well, if I can just keep them entertained until the radiator's fixed, then maybe when he gets the radiator fixed, I can, Mom and Dad will be home. I can pass off Haley, and I can take Lane fishing, and everybody will be okay, And he came in, and at that moment, the bank called. Like literally by the time when he shut his truck door and began walking up the driveway to come around the back of the farmhouse, the bank called. The one check my ex-husband had written for child support bounced. And I had already paid a bill and bought the radiator with it. So I was already on the hook for another one of his behaviors. And I immediately right then just kind of melted. I was so mad. That really the only time I cry is when I'm mad. And legit, poor David came around the back of the porch to Lane crying because he wanted to go fishing at the pond, Haley crying because the girl needed a nap, and me crying because I really was having homicidal tendencies at that point. I was just not very happy. So he kind of came around the corner of the back porch, and it was just like, bless his heart, God knows what he thought he saw. And he looked at me and he was like, now you got to know, I'm mad at all men at this point. He looked at me and he goes, are you all right? And I was like, do I look all right? I was mad, man. I was mad. And he was like, is he talking about that pond? And I was like, what other pond would he be talking about? And he's like, I'll take him fishing. You just collect yourself. And I was like, oh, another man telling me what to do. Well, he took Lane fishing. I could see the pond from the back window. So I kind of paced Haley back and forth in the back room and kind of looked out the window, got her finally asleep and put down. And, within 20 minutes of fishing, kid was happy. He brought him back to the back porch, and he was like, y'all okay? And I'm like, yep, thank you. I appreciate that. I said, just had a moment. I said, the first check my stinking ex-husband wrote for child support just bounced. And I said, I'd done paid a bill and bought this radiator, but I'll figure it out. I said, good Lord have mercy. I'll figure it out. And he goes, his child support check bounced? I said, yeah. He goes, he sounds like a gem. And I said, oh, yeah. Just a gift that keeps on giving. Kind of like syphilis, And he goes, anything I can do? And I said, no. I said, radiator. I said, that would be great. I said, but no. I said, that's it. He goes, oh, okay. I'll put the radiator in now. And I was like, okay, appreciate it. And so he goes out and starts to put that. He takes the radiator box, goes out there and starts to put that radiator in. And Who pulls up in the back driveway? But my ex-husband, who had not seen the children in months at that point. So I'm like, oh, what the hell? I'm like, who does he have in the car? But the temp agency secretary he ran off with. And what did the court documents say in the parenting plan? That he wasn't to have them around her or anyone else. And he was supposed to take the children to his parents' house for visits. So here he comes bouncing through the door like he owns the place. And he's like, I've come to pick up the kids for the weekend. And I said, you didn't call, nothing. He goes, well, I counted the weekends. This is my weekend. Legally, I couldn't deny him that, even though he had not been picking them up. It was technically supposed to be his weekend, even though he hadn't communicated anything and had just been kind of out there for months. And I said, you can't continue to do this. I said, your check just bounced. And he's like, no, it didn't. I was like, the bank just called. I said, it's why I look like this, and I've had such an evening. He's like, who's that? And I said, Samantha, my sister-in-law's name is Samantha. I said, Samantha's husband's brother is putting in my radiator because her husband got stuck at work late. And he goes, why didn't you take it to a mechanic? I said, because between school, daycare, driving 15,000 loops around the freaking earth to take care of divorces and night classes, I'm a little penny pinched. I was so mad at him. And he said, well, I want to take the kids. And I said, well, then you're going to go pack their bags because I'm not helping you. I said, you're not supposed to have her around them. He goes, it says I have to take them to mom and dad's. I will take them to mom and dad's, and then I will turn around and take them home. I said, you're going to go to your mom and dad's, and then you're going to leave the children at your mom and dad's, drive another hour to take her home, drive another hour back to your mom. He goes, yeah. And I said, well, that's more effort than you ever gave all of us. I said, so, okay. I was so mad. And so he went in to pack their bag because I told him I wasn't helping him. Wasn't helping him for nothing. I knew to stay away from him because at that point I just wanted to just grab hold of him and just shake until he rattled and then shake until he didn't rattle. That's where I was. And so I stand on the back porch trying to stay at an angle where nobody could see me and just trying to just breathe, work through my rage at that point. I'm so mad. And David's just over there working away. He's not paying attention to anything. He's just putting a radiator in because that was his task at hand. And if y'all have met David, task at hand, accomplished task at hand, move to next task at hand. That's my husband. And here comes this little, I hear the car door, and here comes this little blonde hussy out of that car. She's older than me, y'all. She sashayed up to him, and I'm in the back porch just listening, going, what the heck is she doing? She's not supposed to get out of the car here. She's stupid. Yes, she was. And I'm like, oh God, she's gonna make the only person that will put my radiator free. She's gonna make him run off. I thought, oh my God, and I'm sitting there going, just Lord, make her go back in that car and shut up, And she walks over to David and she goes, oh, so you're the new man? And he goes, no. And she goes, well, you're here. You must be who she's got her eye on, her locks. And he goes, ma'am, I don't think she particularly cares for anybody. Truth. And she kind of snickered. And he goes, was that funny? And he's working away. And she's like, well, just her situation and everything that's happened, maybe she'll wisen up for her next relationship. And I'm sitting there going, you dumb butt. Because listen, how he met you is how he's going to leave you. And guess what it was? I thought, I know what dogs that run trash do. That's why I will not have him. And he's going to do it to you too. And he did. So then she's like, it's for the best anyway, because who could find anything pretty about her? Who could look at her and see she was pretty? She doesn't keep herself up. She's let herself run down. She knew it had to be. She was justifying herself. She knew it had to be coming. And she goes, anyone will leave something like that if something like this offers them any kind of attention. And David kind of looked at her and she was like, I'm prettier. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, she's freaking shallow as heck. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh my children are going to be around this vapid woman. Oh my Lord. Lord have mercy. And David laid down his wrench. He turned his hat sideways and he tilted his head. And I'm looking like through around the corner behind a rhododendron. Nobody knows I'm there from, anybody else. And David does that and he looks at her and he goes, "Man, woman put herself in the middle of a marriage of 2 kids and bust up a home. Ain't nothing pretty about you." And then he twisted his hat back, picked up his wrench, and went back to work. And she began to cry and had to march her little butt back and get in the car and sniffled. And I thought, oh, I think I need to pay attention to this man. And so we finally got them on their way. I had called his parents to let them know he should pick up the kids, make sure he brings them to y'all. And he came in, he goes, "It's done." And I said, "Okay, thank you." And he goes, "I hope you don't have to go anywhere for a few days." He said, "I need to check them hoses in a few days, make sure they ain't leaking." I said, "Well, I got to go somewhere." I think it was the following day or the day after. And I said, I gotta be there. I said, "He's supposed to finally sign those stupid papers I've been waiting on for months." And I said, "I'm not going to be there and have it postponed again." I said, I can't get rid of him fast enough at this point, And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, he looks like one of them. And I said, "Oh yeah, he's one of them." And he goes, "I'd rather you not drive it that far until I know that it's not leaking." And I said, "Well, I got a finger, I got a thumb, I'll be okay." I was not in a good era in my life, y'all. I was not. I was very caustic. And he goes, "Well, I just don't, you traveling with the kids, I just hope, I don't want nothing to happen." And I was like, "You don't have to worry about me. I'm fine." And I said, "I really appreciate you putting in the radiator." I said, "If I had any money at all, I'd certainly pay you." He goes, "No, it's not a problem at all." He said, "People should help each other." He said, "My brother said he'd do it. He couldn't keep his word." He said, he said, "Just what we do." He said, we keep our family's word." And I said, "Well, I appreciate that." And he left. I went up and just kind of sat there dumbfounded because in literally 2 hours, all that had occurred. And I was just like, what the heck, man? Life is laughing. And got in the vehicle. Literally, by the time, I don't know, if I remember correctly, he didn't bring the kids back. His mom did. And had they talked to me about that, I would have said, "Just meet me at the courthouse and pass them off. There's no reason for you to drive to me when I'm driving down there anyway." But he did not communicate that. So his mom brought the kids back, and I was like, I'm literally going to have to turn around and follow you back home. So down, I get in, I'm getting in my Mitsubishi Montero. I'm swapping car seats back over, and I'm fixing to get in my Mitsubishi Montero to leave. And I look in my passenger seat, and there is a cell phone and $20 bill. And y'all, it should have been a sweet gesture, but y'all, it made me mad. It made me mad. I was like, he thinks I'm just some divorced woman that just needs help. Well, he think again. And I was just mad. So I called his brother, and I was like, "You tell your brother that tomorrow, as soon as he gets off work, he comes by and he gets his property. I did not need money, and I did not need a cell phone, and he does not have to worry about me." And he's like, whoa, my brother was just being nice. And I said, "I do not need him to be nice. I said, I needed him to put in a radiator. He accomplished that successfully. Thank you very much. None of this is necessary, and he needs to get his property." And so I, got down there. He did not, something happened. He had not completed something and still I did not get the gavel slapped on those divorce papers that day. Oh, it made me mad. Finally, I just started paying my lawyer to go every time for me because I was like, I'm not driving down here every freaking month to be disappointed. And the first day he got off work, he came by and he goes, "I didn't mean to make you mad." He said, "I just didn't want you traveling with the kids on the road when I couldn't make sure that them hoses wasn't leaking yet." And I had time to calm down. I said, "I know." I said, "I'm sorry." I said, I didn't mean to be so rude." I said, "I'm just not in a good space." And I said, I don't particularly want attention from anyone. And I said, if I get it, I said, I'm probably not going to return it with kindness. I said, I'm just not in a place. He goes, "No, you're not." And I was like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "But I can understand." And I was like, well, thank you, And I was like, I do appreciate your help. Here's your phone. Here's your money back. And he's like, oh, you can keep that money. He's like, take the kids to Dairy Queen. I was like, I do not want your money. Literally had to shove it in his face. And he goes, you need to let people be nice to you sometimes too. And he just walked away. And I thought, oh, dang it. Now I've caught his wisdom, And I thought about it for a while. And then he just started showing up places. And what he had said to that woman just stuck with me. And my kids started to recognize him because they would want to play with Samantha's son, who was the same age. And now he's their cousin, which, worked out very well. But so we would go to restaurants with play areas, or we would go to restaurants, or go to like, well, not really McDonald's, but we go to like Dairy Queen or a local little hamburger grill, grab them a hamburger or hot dog, take them to the park, and let them all just play till they were exhausted so they sleep that night. Toddlers, lovely things. And he would just wander in because he knew where everybody was. So he just wander in and sit down, spell, and talk. And then the kids started recognizing him, and he'd show up at church. And my mother was like, you can act like you know the boy. And I'm like, And I don't know. After I finally got over my mad spell, we had a conversation about something, and what he had said to that woman has just always stuck with me. And he just just repetitive kindness. What he said he meant. What he said he was going to do, he did. Everyone that spoke about him in high regard. He was just an honest, hard worker. And he was just so the opposite of my first husband that I took a little bit of comfort in that and kind of got to know him, and then realized he's freaking hilarious. We never really dated. We would all go fishing, like me, him, his brother, Samantha, and all the kids. So we never really got to date. But we got to spend enough time together, that I knew he was good with the kids. I knew the kids. I think he loved the kids before he left me, to be quite honest. And I knew he was great with the kids. I knew everything about his family. And when he said he was interested in me, I sat down with his parents and I was like, do y'all have questions? Because if a divorced woman with 2 kids showed up with my son, I'd have some questions. And they kind of laughed and they were like, no. They're like, you seem to be a very sweet girl. Just didn't meet the sweetest man the first time. And I'm like, no, I did not. And I said, I'm partially responsible for that bad decision. I said, so, I said, I'll wear that one. That's my mistake. And they said, no. They said, we don't have any problems with you. And I was like, well, okay then. And we started spending time together. And then lo and behold, we finally got like a date night. He actually got to take me to like a restaurant in the next county over. And we were sitting under a red light, and I don't know, I was talking about school or something other. I had to go the next weekend to do a final. And then I was just going to stay with a friend so I didn't have to make the drive, so many dadgum times. And because I had to be there for like 3 days for all my finals because I did a lot of distance learning. And he looked at me, he goes, well, what are your plans after school? And I was like, oh, well, then I'll go to the next degree. It's like, I've got to keep going. I'm going to have to finish, a lot more school before I can take care of these kids on my own. And he said, but he's like, you going to stay around or you going to, and I was like, well, if my kids are happy and I can finish school, I said, then I'll stay here unless I have to move for work at a later date. And he goes, I'd kind of like it if you'd stick around. And I was like, I was like, well, I understand. I was like, I'll have to make that decision. It's best for my kids. And he's like, I would like to help you make that decision. And I was like, he's like, I'd really like that. And he looked at me, he's like, I'd like to tie a ribbon on you and make you mine. That's what the man said. And I sat there and literally I stopped him and I was like, hang on. And he was like, oh God, he's no telling what he thought I was going to say. I said, listen, I said, I have been left once high and dry with two toddlers. And I said, if it happens again, I said, I will have homicidal tendencies. And I do know how to operate every firearm you probably own. You want to think about this for a minute. And he laughed and he said, no, he said, I want to marry you. And I, at that point, had lost contact with my ex-husband again. God knows where he was, what he was up to. I don't have a clue. So we couldn't even call anybody and let him know we was getting married. Nothing was going down, nothing. We got married, and a few months later, my mom called and she said, your ex-husband's looking for you. And I said, why? And she goes, I don't know, but he sounds like it's important. And I was like, oh. She said, well, I gave him your new house number. And I said, that's fine, Mom. I said, I figured you would if he ever checked in. I said, I just didn't know where he was. And she said, well, he's looking for you. And I said, okay, that's fine. So sure enough, since we got settled that night and was home for 5 minutes, he called. And he was like, your mom told me you just got married. And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, when did that happen? I said, why do you care? I was like, ain't none of your business. And he was like, well, I just, these are things I need to know. I said, well, I might have needed to know before you ran off with the 10-page secretary. I said, I wasn't involved in that decision-making process. I said, so you're not in mine. He's like, fine, be that way. I was like, I'm going to be that way. I'm going to be this way forever. Sitting on this one, son. And he goes, well, I've got a problem. And I said, what's your problem? And he said, the state's hounding me for money because you had to take Lane because of a tooth issue. I said, yeah. I said, he had oral surgery right before you vacated the premises. And I said, he had an abscess afterwards. And I said, you had set up the insurance to where you had to make the appointment. And I said, I could not find you, and the insurance could not find you, and I could not make an appointment. And I said, I had to take him to the ER. I said, the ER helped me file paperwork to get him Medicaid. I said, we had to get Medicaid so that we could take him and then have this fixed because he needed another small little surgery to take care of the abscess. And he said, well, I didn't know any of that was going on. I said, well, you wouldn't when you're stuck up some woman's crawl, not taking care of your kids. Of course, that made him mad. I did not care. And he said, well, now they're coming after me. And I said, what? And he goes, they're coming after me. They want me to pay because they said that they had insurance, but I was keeping them from it. And they say that I abandoned you all and they want me to pay. And I said, well, then I guess you need to pay. He said, well, why would you do that if you knew they were going to come after me? I said, I'm not here to make your life easier anymore. I'm not your wife. I'm not your caretaker. I'm not your mama. I said, I have children. And I said, I have to take care of them. I said, because I can't depend on the other person to help create them. I said, so do not question any of my decisions because I'm making them alone, thanks to you. And he slammed down the phone. I got on the hospital, I was doing transcription. And it was probably a month had gone by. About 3 weeks to a month. And he called back. And he said, hey, I've got an idea. And I was like, he's like, they're still coming after me. And I was like, I still don't care. Like, you're going to pay the bill, I guess. You're going to have to pay the bill. And he said, my lawyer said that I could just terminate my rights. I said, the state's not going to let you do that. I said, these children have to be affixed to some male's social security number. I said, for benefit purposes. I said, they will not let you do that. I said, you're going to have to take care of these children. He said, I thought maybe your husband would want to adopt them. And at that point, I didn't know whether to have a glimmer of hope that I was going to get rid of him or to be so upset with his behavior and to think that it was so easy for him to just cast these kids aside. I didn't know what I needed to feel. I honestly did not. It bothered me greatly. I hear a vehicle running. Must be Carlos. Must be. And I said, I don't know if they'll allow that. I said, we've not been married very long. He said, but we start the process. He said, they'll hold off. He said, they've got a warrant on me. He said, it's a child support attachment. And I said, okay, again, I don't care. And I didn't care. And he said, well, I don't want to go to jail. And I said, I don't know what to tell you. I said, you've not paid child support. I said, and he said, well, I didn't know who I was supposed to be paying it to. I said, they're trying to send you letters. I said, I was told not to accept anything. I said, but nothing has come in the mail for me to deny. I said, so I didn't figure we had a problem, And he said, well, they're wanting such and such back, or I have to go spend so many days in jail. And I said, well, sorry about your luck. I did not care. And he said, well, if we start the process, my lawyer says they'll probably just kind of let it go on through, and I'll probably just pay a nominal fee, but it won't be the full amount. And then, we can both go our own ways. And I said, fine. I said, if you don't want to raise these children, I said, you start the paperwork. I said, I refuse to. He said, well, I don't have the money to pay for an adoption. I said, you request it. And I said, I'll find a way to pay for it. And he said, okay. And he petitioned it. Then I accepted the petition. And the lawyer cited him as where did my yarn go again? How many times are we going to do this? Hello, yarn. Hello, yarn. I have more, though, don't I? Do I have more? I have enough. So then he became a co-petitioner in the event, and we went forward with the adoption. And we were going to see the judge, and we were supposed to at that point have like a 6-month wait, and then they would sign the adoption. But the judge took us into chambers because it was a juvenile issue, and David was also on the rescue squad and a deputy in the area, and so they were trying to handle this discreetly, I believe, which was kind of them. And so they took us into chambers, and lo and behold, here come my ex-husband, and he had at that point had married the first legal day he had married that woman. So he brought her in the room, and the judge was like, who is this? Because she kept trying to interject into the conversation. He was like, well, this is my new wife. And he was like, well, these are not her children. She doesn't have a dog in this race. She doesn't need to be speaking. Ma'am, you can hold your tongue. And I was like, okay, I like this judge, And he was like, who started this process? And, we had to go through the whole story again. And my ex-husband verified that I was, that's what's that happened. He's got a debt to pay, and he didn't want to, he's not going to be able to pay child support. And he doesn't want to spend his time in jail. And if David wants to adopt him, he's more than willing to let David adopt him. And he's like, but you're going to make them pay for the adoption. He's like, oh, I don't have the money to even pay child support. So how am I going to pay for an adoption? And he looked at him and he said, you got frosted hair. You've got on a brand new $40 leather belt. He said, you've got on about $80 leather loafers. He said, you've got on about $100 pants. He said, from a nice men's warehouse. He said, she's got about $120 hairdo. He said, nice pocketbook, probably run you about $150. He said, there's child support. And I was just grinning from ear to ear because I was like, thank you, Mr. Judge. Because I think I was in a denim jumper that day, a denim overall jumper, and my church shoes and a t-shirt, a solid color t-shirt. And David was just in his work clothes. He had to wear a little like a blue navy work uniform to work. And every time my ex-husband spoke, the judge got more and more mad. I was like, I feel you, bud. And finally he was like, son, I don't know what sack of sorry you are. He said, but I know this other young man, and I know he will raise these children. He said, I'm going to waive the 6-month waiting period. He said, I'm going to slap the gavel on the adoption today. He said, as far as I'm concerned, he said, David Waters, bam, these children now belong to you. And he said, you may file for their paperwork. He said, as soon as the clerk has filed this order. And I was like, woohoo. So literally, David and I had been married 3 or 4 months, and he adopted the kids. To which I asked him several times, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure? He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah. He said, he said, number one, he said, I know that I will take care of them. He said, number two, he said, that man does really not need to be a decision maker in their lives. And I was like, yeah, but it's, it's stress on you. And he was like, nope. He's like, I love him. He's like, I'm going to raise him. No, we have one of them. Woohoo! So that's my story. That's David and my whole little dating saga there. And the man has never been anything but what he said he would be. And I don't always think my children appreciated him because they really never knew. Where's my yarn? They really never knew their biological dad. I kept them in touch with his family because they had always been good to me, and so I didn't want to punish them for their son's behavior. And I also knew that at some point the kids would have questions, and they might be a safe place for them to get the questions answered. But what his mother did was, when the kids got curious, she completely went against everything that she and I had talked about, and was like, come stay with me. As soon as you turn 18, you can get to know your dad, blah, 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 blah. Your mom forced this. And both my kids had seen the paperwork, read the paperwork in the courts. They knew it wasn't forced. They knew that he had requested it. And he was a petitioner and then a co-petitioner. They knew that we had to pay for it. They knew the problems that we had. And but I knew at some point they would have questions and want to meet him. It's just a natural curiosity that children will have. And by not knowing him, they were able to kind of, and I knew this was also going to be an issue, they were able to build up a hopeful picture of who he may be in their mind. And I knew that he probably was not going to meet that hopeful picture of who they wanted him to be, but they would still probably want to meet him. And she was like the Pied Piper. She was pulling them kids away. And I raised little independent kids, so I never anticipated that they would stay in this area as they got older, because there's just not the commerce and the opportunities. And matter of fact, I had told them, this is just not a good place. It's a good place to raise kids if you're able, but it's not a good place to be young and try to start out in life. And And so as soon as my daughter was in college and kind of like not under my thumb, she began going on her breaks to South Carolina to visit her grandma, who would then take her a couple hours across the line into Georgia to visit her biological father. But they would do all this, and I didn't know where my kid was. I had enough wherewithal to know what was going on, so it wasn't like I was freaking out. But then all this George Floyd crap happened. And it seemed like the whole world kind of went up in flames there for a while. And that was a weekend that she had gone to her grandma's. And I called her grandma and I said, listen, I said, I need to know where she is. I said, because I know she's not at school. I said, I know she's with you. And I said, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, today. And I said, I just need to know what region she's in and that she's okay. I said, because this is irritating me. And she goes, I can't defy her trust within me, her confidence. I said, oh, shut up. I was like, I am her mother. And I said, I would like to know where she is, And I said, I know she's on a small break from school. I said, I would like to know where she is. And of course she was like, I can't tell you that. And I literally cussed her blind. And I said, you better not ever look at me ever again. I said, you know what your son is. And I said, you have lied to those children. And I said, that is on your head. I said, I said, they are going to spend a third of their lives hoping that he is what they want him to be, only to find out he is not, and to have wasted part of their life. I said, just like I did. And I said, that's on you now. I said, I hope you know that. I said, I can't step in and tell them not to do it. I said, it'll make them want to do it more now. And so their natural curiosity, has got to be. But in the process, they got invited to a barbecue down there. And my daughter, that's how my daughter met her future husband. So, listen, if that's what it took for her to be happy, okay, so be it. It's fine. I dropped his eyeball. But boy, I am not. I'm like it irritates me every day. It irritates me every day that he has any kind of hold or leeway in their life to have any kind of feedback, because he never cared. He never cared when it was needed to give it, but when it's not needed and they're grown, man of the hour, which is normally how these people roll. So now, David was just kind of, he raised both the kids, and so we sit here alone a lot, and it's like, listen, they've got, I'm like, they've got to figure this out. We knew that we were going to have independent children. We raised them. And I was like, they got to figure this one out. I said, now since it's been placed in their mind, that he was cheated or something, I said, they've got to figure this out on their own. And I said, now Haley has married, and I said, she's happy. I said, she's probably just going to be down there. I said, it's okay. I said, we'll still see her. We'll still visit. It's okay. We don't get to visit as much as we want to, but we do talk to her and get to do video calls. And, so we're still very heavily in her life. My babies are my world. And, but it has hurt him, because Lane has pulled very much away. And it bothers me, because I know that my ex-husband, when he sees Lane, I know that he has to look at that young man that he is and say, he's excelling at life right now, not because of anything I did, because every good trait that boy has, he got from Dave. He learned from Dave. Every skill that he's using for employment and to take care of his family and his kids, he got from Dave. And so I don't know what my ex-husband looks at and thinks he can benefit him anymore, or that he can play a role that he thinks he can be more proficient in than Dave. I don't know. But I know that I just have to sit back and give them time to figure out what kind of place that he's going to have in their life. Because it's not my decision to make, it's theirs. And I'm gonna have to just, sit and wait to see what decision they make. And right now, Lane is choosing him, probably just out of, I don't know, some kind of sick way of a vendetta. I don't know. And I know that it's just an emotional time in their life that they're all going to have to get through. And I do know how my ex-husband operates and the control mechanisms he used in our marriage. And I totally knew that he would employ them upon the children should he have the chance to do so. So now I just have to sit here and just, know that I did give my children a good education and a good foundation. And I have to sit here and know that eventually, their raising is going to remind them who they are and who they need to be. And they're going to see, listen, at some point, my ex-husband, his cracks in the veneer are going to show. And this will become too hard for him, because he never cared for them. He never shopped for the diapers. I went to the grocery store alone. I went to a lot of my doctor appointments alone. As soon as I had both kids, he was asleep in the other bed in the hospital. Like he was as uninvolved as he could be without completely just telling me I'm looking for an out. And I was busy raising kids, and I'm not like, I don't need constant reinforcement. If you're not serving me divorce papers, I think we're cool. It did not, because I was raised in such a mindset about marriage. I did not think that whoever I chose to marry would have a different mindset and would break those vows. When I was raised to not think, I did not think someone would make a covenant with God and then just walk away and thumb his nose at it and do the things that he's done. And that's naivety on my part. I should have known better. And like I tell y'all, I'm not the person I was when I was young. Oh my gosh, no, I'm not. I am so, no. And it's kind of sad, but it's also kind of necessary. But, it's just, crap happens. Crap happens. I'll do this. Plot this out a little better. So, Lane's going through a lot. He's got 2 young little girls now, and his wife does not particularly care for me. I don't know why. Because all I ever did was support him and love him, and we were fine. We were close, fine. They were visiting, gosh, a couple times a week. And then literally one day she sent me like a 4-scroll Facebook message that basically, I call it the Hitler manifesto, because I have to make fun of it, because it was like, what? It made no sense. I was more worried that she was in some kind of postpartum depression, which then only enraged her. I don't know how you don't think the lady with the psychology degree is going to be concerned that you are constantly in postpartum depression, when Thursday you were at my house laughing and smiling with me and all was good, and on Sunday evening I now have a 4-page vendetta written against me. So it was just like, I don't. And I am one of those people that I work really hard to keep my home chill, and I don't want drama here. And so I'm like, I'm not going to play your game. And she wanted to be, I guess, a puppet master. I don't know. And I was not willing to tie on the strings. So she just basically was like, well, they're not family anymore. And I'm like, oh, God bless it. So now I've got to wait for them to grow out of this phase or learn a very hard lesson. I don't know. This is the grumpy frog. And probably a lot of it's for whatever reason stuff my ex-husband has fed fuel to them, who God only knows. So when they sit like this, they sit like, and you can tie their arms, cross their arms. You can tie them to, people use them as curtain ties in their house, and their little butts hang and show. People find a whole lot of uses for them. I think they're cute. When he sits like that, there's his little butt. Somebody put a tattoo on one the other day. They put a little heart on one, and I thought that was terribly cute, but I thought that's going to take 30 minutes to embroider, and I ain't doing that. But isn't he cute? Kiss my butt frog. So he's going to go in the Etsy shop because David buys all the yarn basically to keep me sane so that I can crochet. And so every once in a while, if I can give him something back so he can recoup his yarn money, it's nice. So I'm going to give this one to David. Just tell him to put it in his Etsy store. He's cute. Now, he's got safety eyes, so he's not kid-friendly. They're in there, but he's not kid-friendly. We don't want a kid joke. He's got pink safety eyes. Pink. They're pink. They're black, but they got a pink band around them. Well, that doesn't help. There you go. Kind of see it. So that's what we're all contending with right now. But, kids have to grow and they have to learn. And I remember myself at that age, I had a lot of confusion about things. I had to grow out of some of my own ignorance and bad thinking patterns. And, I had to identify some behaviors I had learned that were not profiting me anything, and learn how to set them down and make better decisions. And so I just have to give my kids the same time to grow and make better decisions. Me and my daughter are still very close, and her twins, they know me as Granny Isby. They call David Pop Pop. Ain't he cute? He's cute. I got a balance now. He's cute. And so I have faith things will work out. But it's sad to say, but I have faith also that I know my ex-husband will trip up, because it's what he does best. I just literally have to wait. Because the only consistent thing he's been is drama and trouble and hurt. So I just have to wait. So, but it does make for, like, we have never celebrated like Valentine's Day. Because when we were a young couple, we started off with 2 kids, started off paying for a very expensive adoption. My ex-husband, I think, paid like $1,100 or $1,400 to the state. They gave me a portion of that. We put it in savings. I mean, literally just a portion of it. We put it in savings and kept putting it in savings until we had enough to fence the property because there were dogs in the surrounding area, and then when the kids couldn't play outside safely. So we used it to fence the property so the kids could play outside. And that's all their birth father ever helped do around here. So I don't know what else the state got out of him. So he didn't go to jail on his child support attachment, though he did go to jail later when he got charges. He was working as a deputy and apparently took liberties with an inmate and got charged, and he got a diversion because he'd never been in trouble before. Now listen, if I hadn't paid off all his bad checks where he overdrafted us, he would have not got a diversion. So somebody should tell me thank you, because I sold horses and worked my butt off to pay off debts that weren't mine. Somebody should send me a thank you. It'd be nice. So I'd like, but nobody will ever tell me thank you. Dog seizures. I had to do a lot of research on dog seizures because of the little Boston Terrier we recently rescued. And I had to understand what was going on in her body before I could, and clear up things in her body before I could understand what was causing the seizures. And it ended up being REM cycle seizures that just occur in small dogs. They have these issues, especially if they've like been through a lot of kennel trauma and stuff. And she only now has one, probably like she hadn't had one in, well, since that one she had on Boom, but she's only had that one in like almost 5 months now. I was on Booma's panel one night when she had a seizure and I had to leave, and that's the last one she's had. And she hadn't had one in a couple 3 months before that one. So yeah, she's gonna be down to like maybe 2 a year, 3 a year. But we had to figure out what was going on with her. So I would say you probably need to email me. And we probably need to discuss some other stuff that's going on with the dog, because what we found out with Luna was that she had a huge infection in her stomach lining and bowels, and we had to heal that and take away everything that was that could harm her gut, because the seizures presented more when she was sick. And so once we got her gut healed, the seizures started producing, and then the healthier she got. Now we were looking at pictures the other night because the family that has her now, they're sending us pictures and stuff so we can keep up on her. And she's doing great. And she's in love with those two kids. She's just on cloud nine. They love her too. I thought it was going to be harder, but because they are in constant contact and we get pictures, it's like she's still with us, so it's not been really hard. But you probably need to email me, and it's watersworkload@gmail.com. And we can kind of start to talk and figure out what's going on, because honestly the vets were no help. But my daughter is she graduated UT pre-veterinary medicine, and so I have a lot of vet medicine knowledge too. And if I can help you, I certainly will. So you probably need to email me watersworkload, all one word, watersworkload@gmail.com, and just put dog seizures in the subject so I know when I look at it, I can identify it. The fact that is it a puppy? I don't know. We'll have to talk about yours and see the age and other indicators that's going on. And because normally seizures, unless they've been like a lifelong event, seizures are normally caused by something or the result of something else going on in the body. And normally, it's kind of like when the body learns to have a seizure, it stays there with it. But you have to then reduce the triggers to the seizure. And so you have to start slowly removing all the stimuli that could be causing any issues, understanding any sickness in that animal's system, and you just have to be a sleuth and take it down to bare necessities, and then try to get them healthy. And if you're we were successful that way, but it took us about 4 months to get her stomach healed, and there were two issues at and both of those issues we sat down and we thought we were going to lose her. We thought we're going to have her put down. She's not going to be able to get through this. And we just could not, because on the day she tried so hard. And so I'm glad that we hung in there with her, because now she's great. She's great. Yeah, email me and I'll look for it this evening, and we'll start talking and trying to figure out what's going on. Because the reason that dogs have seizures are almost identical to the reason people have seizures. And so if it's not a true epilepsy issue, then it's probably an indicator of a health issue or some kind of stimuli in the body that needs to be managed or fixed. Very rarely is it purely neurological with a dog unless they're born with them, or they, have some kind of trauma. So it kind of mirrors a lot with the human component. So yeah, I don't care. We'll start swapping information, start talking, and seeing if we can figure out what's going on. Absolutely, because the vets were no help. None. Frustrating. Hi, why'd you lie? I've been on here yapping. It was Valentine's Day, and somebody had said something sweet about David, so I went through really the reason why I even looked twice at David and ended up falling in love. I told that story today, and went through some of the hardships that you face as a family that's gone through an adoption, kids that go through adoptions. No matter how secure you make the home base, those outside external forces and those internal questions they still have to be dealt with somehow. So everyone that has gone through an adoption is you're going to go through at some point when the kid is going to pull away, create a reason to pull away, create a episode or behavior to pull away, and that will give them what they feel is the emotional freedom to exit stage left and go to the long lost parent and see if that person is who they think they are in their head, who they've built them up to be. And most people do not find that to be true. And sometimes it's very hard on the kids as young adults to go through that, and sometimes it's not so bad. Sometimes, if it could be a profit, if it could profit my children emotionally, then I would be like, it's worth it. But I have never seen an emotional profit from my ex-husband. Like, literally from the time that the ring was placed on my finger in the church, he just stopped trying. And it was almost just a steady downfall of just daily showing me that he really didn't care. That he just didn't care. I think he was like an adrenaline junkie, an endorphin. I think he was in love with being in love. And now that he's on his third marriage, and every wife he's had except for me, thank you God, every wife after me has been an affair. And it's like, you have a problem, sir. This is not how you meet people. This is not the conditions that you're supposed to meet people under. And I feel very bad, because even the second wife, that was the temp agency secretary, trusted him enough to have a child. And so there's another child entangled in there. I think he does actually pay for that one. So at least one kid's getting benefit. But he doesn't, I think he only sees her minimal times because he signed paperwork to allow her to move out of the state. And so he doesn't really, he never has really exercised parental rights completely over a child and raised them. But what behooves me even more is then after he had that affair and then married the next one, the state that he had moved to allowed him to then adopt children that weren't his. After that track record of, please take these two, I can't afford them, I don't want a prison, and yeah, that one's mine and I'll pay for it, but let's let her move out of state. I wouldn't. Like if I was at a horse race, like I would not bet on that horse to win. I'd be like, no, track record's horrible. No. So I question a lot of what that state did because I'm like, why? What? Why? So, but whatever. I personally don't think they did a federal background correctly and did not see everything, because there are some litigation services that are like, he should not have been allowed to have adopted when he freely basically requested his rights be terminated and handed over to another person. I'm like, whatever. At this point, it's just like, go away. And like, I'll have huge chunks of my life that I don't even think about him. And then like last summer, I got a call out of the blue, and his stepdad, which had been the kid's grandpa, the kid's pappy that was married to his mom, passed away. And legit, like that guy was the only like straight spoken, just straight shooter in the whole family, but he passed away. And the last thing that he had to do that the court that he drug his feet on was he was supposed to, and we had signed all the paperwork. I had signed all the paperwork. My lawyer she was like, I'll take care of it. But the judge would not slap the gavel until he had to, his father had said, I will pay the debt off on this home to let him get it out of his name so that, or get it into his name so it's out of her name. Because I was like, he can have it. If there's any equity, he can have it. I don't want it. I want to be free and clear, and I want to walk away and, And so his dad was like, well, I'll just buy it. And he's like, then he can just, pay the whatever, it's like $30 or $50 to have it put in his name out of my name. And I had signed everything, and my lawyer could handle everything because she had all the signatures she needed to basically handle that for me. And the judge was like, okay, that's fine. They finally went back to court, and it was, a few months after, that time that I had gone. And then I was like, I'm just going to pay my lawyer to go for me. I'm tired of it. And they slapped the gavel. And so I thought everything was great. It took me 11 years to get him off my background, because while he was still technically married to me, but living with that woman that he then married the first day he legally could, he went and bought her car, then got repossessed. Because I was still legally married to him, it tagged all three of us. That's the gift that keeps on giving. Probably at this point, I would have been better to have just gotten syphilis, because he's worse than syphilis. Just saying. Stays that bad. So it took me 11 years with all of his, because where I'd paid off all the overdraft in his name. And because I'd done that, I didn't know he was seeing that woman, or I would not have done it. I would not have done it. I would have let him go to jail. I would not. The only reason I was doing it was to keep the father of my children working and out of jail. And let me tell you what, we had some serious conversations about, you don't write a freaking check if the money's not in the mother freaking bank, you stupid idiot. I mean, I was not a nice person. I can see why he did not appreciate me. But listen, we had two toddlers. You don't write checks just willy-nilly. And you don't take somebody to Red Lobster. And I could have charged him with this. I had a student account I had to do distance learning. And so I set up my student account. I had after I bought books and stuff, I might have had a couple $300 that I would use. And I put it in the bank in between me and the school. So we were still really rural. So I put it in the bank between me and the school that I traveled to do on weekends and stuff, so that I could use my little debit card in that county to pull from the ATM to get gas or something if I needed it for travel back and forth to school. And that's all I used that money for. It was my school money. It was only in my name. I kept the debit card under the checkbooks in the checkbook box in my little file cabinet in the computer table. I had a system. I didn't even think twice about checking that account. And I had just taken care of all the issues at the joint account bank in our name. And then right after that, after I paid everything off, that's when he vacated. He was waiting for me to pay everything off. Oh, Lord. People, listen, learn from my stupidity. Sometimes people need to have a consequence. Let him. I should have just said, listen, he wrote those checks. Take them. Because I know that I did not sign any of those checks. Because he would not let me have the checkbook. So, I should just let him go to jail. But I didn't. I paid all that off. And then he vacated. And then literally like, not even probably a week and a half, 2 weeks after, I get a call. And it's the other bank. And they're like calling and they're saying, we're calling because you've overdrafted your account. I said, no, I've not used it. I said, oh, I've had cash and I've not had to pull any money when I've traveled to school. I've not even used it. And they said, no, ma'am, you've used it. And I said, no, I have not. And I said, please read me the charges. And they said the debit card is being used on the account. They said, it's not being used at the ATM, the debit cards. And I said, I have not used it. And then they began reading me the charges, and it was Red Lobster, and these, restaurants. And I said, he's taken my debit card. And I said, I didn't think he would be that low. And he had overdrafted my student account by like $400. And they were like, well, do you need to press charges? And I was just like, no. I was like, how long do I have? And they gave me a few days to pay it off. Sold a horse, paid it off. Thank God that I had like horses stashed at like my friends' farms and stuff. Like it was just like, I had 2 with Dad. I had a little bay mare, and I had a roan that I had trail rode a lot. And the girl that had got my little Morgan cross had also got a black Tennessee Walker cross that I'd gotten. And she had let them be pasture buddies. And basically was just holding them because they had a huge farm down the mountain from here. And I told her, if I don't need them, you can just have them. And I told her what was going on, and she's like, well, sell them. She's like, sell them. She's like, they can come here and pick them up. And she's like, I'll send you the money. And I was like, okay. So we sold them. And got that taken care of. But oh my gosh, like the things that you don't think people will do that they do. And the other night, and the reason I think why this is so raw is the other night, right before Valentine's Day, David said, he said, I'm going to bring home dinner. He said, I know you're not feeling well. And he said, I'm going to bring home dinner. He had to work Valentine's Day, Saturday. And he said, I'll bring home dinner after work so you don't have to cook. He said, you just need to rest. And I said, well, thank you. I said, that'd be nice. And he said, I know you don't feel like going anywhere. And I said, well, we normally don't go anywhere anyway, And he's like, well, I'll bring home dinner. And I said, okay, thank you. And I had gotten up to do something, and I had decided, just because I hadn't been so sick, I hadn't really cleaned. I decided I wanted to vacuum for some reason right there in front of the wood stove where we had a couple of fires when it was cold. It gets kind of dirty there handling the firewood stuff. And I'd gotten my vacuum and was vacuuming the floor and the rug there. And I said, I'm going to have to get a new vacuum eventually. I said, I'm just going to have to. And I was just both talking to myself because I have to prepare myself for these purchases because then I have to research, find the one I want, make sure it's worth the money. I'm one of those. And he just looked at me and shook his head. And I turned the vacuum off and I said, what? He goes, who are you talking to? I said, mostly myself. I said, I'm going to have to find a vacuum. I said, don't worry. I said, I'll grab one. I said, when I feel good enough to go to town, I said, I've been looking at them. I said, I found one I think I like. And I said, but I'm not. He's like, would you want me to just grab one at Walmart? I said, no. I said, you know how much they cost at Walmart? said, no, 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 no. I said, no, I found one. And I said, I can get it basically half price. I said, if I get it somewhere else, I said, online. I said, which is a valid store. I said, it'd be fine. And he's shaking his head. And I was like, what? I was like, why are you shaking your head at me? He's like, you can buy the things you need. And I said, yes, I know. And I need a vacuum and I will purchase one. And he's like, but you can buy one. And I was like, I know. He's like, you don't have to talk out loud so that I hear it. He's like, you just go buy it. And I was like, do you think that's why I do that? And he said, yeah. He said, anytime you have to make a purchase, he said, you talk about it for weeks before. And he said, I think you're talking yourself around the best way to do it. He said, but I think you're waiting for me to like say it's okay, you can do it. He said, because you never purchase anything until I look at you and go, well, go get it. And that's true, because if either of us have to make a larger purchase, we tell each other about it. But I hadn't thought about it like that. And he said it literally took, he said, a decade for you to buy yourself clothes at the Walmart. He said, I couldn't get you to even go to a nicer store until you were working for the state and was making good money. He said, you were still, in this. And I said, I know. I said, I'm terrified of money because of what my ex-husband did to me. And he said, it took 10 years before you would even take a chance and buy yourself an outfit and not feel guilty and not be terrified. And, he scared me. We hadn't been married very long, and he terrified me. He bought me a horse and brought it home. Best horse I ever had. It was a 2-year-old. I finished breaking it out. Last horse I ever broke out. Best horse I probably ever owned in my life. But it terrified me when he bought it because that was an expense. Was it going to be worth it? Could I turn it into money if it wasn't going to be worth it to me? Could I turn this horse into money where we wouldn't lose money on the horse? Because you have to feed one, keep one up. And so I was just constantly worried about money because that was the frame of mind I was always in that first marriage was money, 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 money. That's why I hate money. I hate money. I'd rather not have any money as to have money and have to be concerned about where it's in going or something, And I finally, after 23 years of marriage, was like, I do that. I still do that. He said, yeah, you still do that. So 23 years later, I'm still having revelations about, yeah, I still have that behavior embedded in me from point blank trauma. I do that. I do, and I'm still learning stuff. Y'all look at me and like, oh, you're so smart and sweet and kind and wise, and I'm like, I'm a toddler in many ways, working through things in my own world sometimes. So it took me 23 years to really, honestly, be like, yeah, I still do that. Because once I started, I was working good, making good money. I've gone and bought vehicles, but it was a necessity buy. I've gone without David and purchased a vehicle. I can buy a vehicle, men, but it was just the daily life. That's where my husband sucked us dry. It was just the daily little stupid things. It wasn't the big purchase. It was just the little a vacuum cleaner, a rocking chair we didn't need for the front porch. He just constantly was just spending money. And so the little things daily was where I would have the hiccups, the anxiety, the trauma. And so I just really honestly identified that the other night when David said that because of my vacuum cleaner. And I was like, I'll find one. He's like, but did you get a new one last time? And I was like, no. And he's like, I told you could get a new one last time. I said, but this lady had this Dyson and she didn't like it. She wanted the next one up. And I was like, I got it dirt cheap and it's a Dyson. And he's like, well, that's fine. He said, but you could have gone and bought whatever you wanted. No, I wouldn't have bought a Dyson. Ain't no way. But I mean, I got that Dyson. She was a rich old, I got it for nothing. She had maybe used it 4 times. So win for me. But I still do that. I still hold on. Even like the smallest purchase will cause me anxiety. But it still happens. It may not happen all the time, but it happens with certain things. And he had to stop me and make me identify what I was doing because I was not seeing it. And then when he stopped me and I was like, Dad, gum, I'm still doing that. And I hate that I still have bad behaviors because of the bad behaviors of my ex-husband. I hate that he has ingrained himself into my life in these sick and twisted little ways that he's still there. But that is why I come on here and I tell you younger people, make good decisions. Do not pair yourself up with somebody that does not deserve you, that is not going to make the best decisions for you, is not going to place you first, is not going to honor the contract that they sit there and they make with you and God when they wed you. Do not hand yourself over to somebody that is just going to use you and walk away. It will just create trauma that 23 years later you'll figure out because you need a vacuum cleaner, and your new husband, who is the most perfect man in the world, will have to sit you down and say, go buy a vacuum cleaner. I'm not your ex-husband. We have money. You can buy a vacuum cleaner. So it's just very important for me to say that because there's going to be somebody benefit from it. And I was a stupid, naive, ignorant young woman, and I'm sure I look like a walking target to that man. Absolutely positive I did. And that is another reason I make myself so aware of behavior now. And probably why I was so adamant about finishing my psychology degree that I had already switched into. I was so adamant about finishing it because I was trying to make sense of what had occurred. And the one thing that I figured out was you can't make sense of other people's behaviors, because if it's a behavior you would not have done yourself, you will never understand it. Because you can't in your mind justify the actions, because you don't have that within you. And because I am not someone that believes in violating marriages and breaking a covenant, a marriage contract, then I will never sit down and say, well, yeah, I can understand why he felt the need to do that. I will never be able to, because I do not believe in that. I do not hold that belief within me, and I cannot wrap my head around it because I would never do that. And I'm sure that's one of those hard things, those hard core beliefs, those that you hold so intrinsically that you will not violate them. You will not be able to flex those to understand people that break those core beliefs that make you who you are. Now, you can understand trauma and other people's, educational issues and mental health issues, and you can learn to understand stuff like that. But if you have a core intrinsic belief that is, very much part of who you are and what you believe to be just and right and how you're supposed to live your life, you will never understand somebody that violates those core beliefs that you hold so dear. Never. No, you're not on the same page, you're not in the same book, you're not in the same library. Somebody's on the Goodwill shelf and somebody's in Barnes and Noble. Okay? That's how different it is. So, young people, do not place yourself in those relationships. Oh my gosh. Don't. And people are like, well, aren't you embarrassed about that? Head, no. 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 I have nothing to be embarrassed about. I was a kind girlfriend. I was a very good wife. I was a very good mother. Now, when he pitted against me and put himself on another team and he became the opponent, I'm sure he did not like me, because I'm not someone that you want on the opposite Red Rover side, But now, if we're on the same team and working to the same goal, I'm going to be like the best person on the team. But if you say you're a foe, I will probably be your biggest burden because I'm going to hold you to it. I'm going to hold you to it. So I never really gave him any, like he was kind of like, he's like, well, can't you forgive me? And I was like, no, never. I was like, I will get thumped on the noggin when I wake up in glory because I know I should, but I can't. I'll take it. I'll get thumped on the noggin. I know I will because I know I probably should, but I'm not there. I can't. Maybe someday I will, but I can't. And he'll be like, well, be the bigger person about this. No. Because that would say, then I'm going to say that in some way, shape, or form, you were justified to do all these wrong things, against me, your wife, against your family unit, that could have brought harm in many ways upon me and these children. No. I'm not softening the blow on you emotionally, so you can feel better about all this. It's just shut up. I'm not going to do it. And, but I found out 23 years later when the real estate man called and he said, they've not taken your name off this property and they just sold it. And he said, I can't move forward with the sale after I have rehabbed the property. He said, I can't move forward with the sale because I need your signature. And I said, I'm not signing anything. I said, that was supposed to be out of my name and out of my control before this gavel was slapped on the divorce contract. I said, I can't exercise control over that. I said, per the divorce, I'm not to exercise control over that. He said, well, I can't move forward with my sale. And I said, well, tough. You should have done a better background. And he said, you won't sign it? And I said, sir, I cannot. It is illegal for me to do so. I said, you need to get a copy of my divorce settlement. Take it to the court. Let them know that he did not fulfill his obligation. Make him fulfill his obligation so that you can get this corrected. He's like, well, that could take me years. I said, sir, it is not my concern. It is yours. And then I had to do like a whole bunch of backgrounds to make sure nothing else was hiding out there, because when you do certain backgrounds, they only tell you about the things that are wrong. Do the backgrounds that tell you about everything, not just the things that are wrong. Do the ones that tell you about everything. So I found out that he had just left that hanging. And had they ever missed payments or not paid that off, because his dad took a note to pay it off so that he could take it out of my name and comply with the courts, which his dad did that. He just didn't pay the $30 or $50 fee to have my name taken off of it. Just laziness, sheer laziness. So I'm like, why did you not do this? He said, well, I'm doing it now. And I was like, you don't get credit 23 years later. Do you not understand? You can't even leave properly. I said, at any time, I said, you didn't want to be responsible for these children. And I said, you wanted to terminate your rights, walk away from me. You didn't want to be financially responsible. You didn't want anybody to be able to come after you for these children. And at the same time, you didn't remove my name. And if you had defaulted on that, they would have come after me. And with my health, if they can't come after me, they'll come after my now adult children. You would have made them responsible for your debts, but you weren't willing to raise them. And he does not understand that. He does not understand that. He doesn't see the problem, which in itself is the problem. So that was a big thing last summer that really peeved me, because I was getting harassed by this real estate guy, and I was like, you call me again, I'm going to put phone harassment on you. Because I'm not signing crap. You can't make me. You can't force me. I said, I talked to the sheriff's department. I said, I'm pulling a bunch of backgrounds. I said, if anything else is wiggy, I said, if you're trying to do something, I said, I will know about it. I said, do not. And so he had to do all the work and chase the ex-husband and the family down and do it the long way. But I'm sorry. I'm not the clean-up batter for this family anymore. And sadly, the person you need is the person that passed away. He was the only man that would take care of things. I said, I'm sorry that you're in this position, but you did so on your own accord from purchasing from this family. So if you knew about me, if you'd done recon and knew about me earlier and called me, I would have said, sir, I can't sign that. You probably don't need to buy that property. And but he was mad at me, and I was like, I don't care if you're mad at me. It's like, sir, 23 years, and I'm still getting calls about this man. I have no more F's to give at this point. And people get really upset with me when I say that, but I'm like, I don't know what you want from me. But I'm still getting called to clean up his messes. And so it's just like, you know, it's frustrating. So if anyone out there is in a relationship and I have pinged on something that you have seen in your own little world, please sit down and have a conversation with yourself and say, is it possible I could end up and have the same story as this woman? Because I'm here to tell you, I love my children. I don't regret my children at all. I love my babies. But that 23 years of hell after the divorce. So basically the almost 30 years of absolute torment that I've dealt with emotionally, and 23 of it where I should have had absolutely no contact with him at all. And he still keeps popping up like a whack-a-mole. It is a big price to pay for stupidity. And that's what I look at him as. He's my price for stupidity. And I was one of the smart kids that wouldn't play the quarter machines at the fair, wouldn't play the stupid games at the fair. I was one of them kids. Saving my money, put it in the bank, get a loan, you pay it off early, you double up on your payments. I was one of those kids. If I had seen him in horse form at a sale barn, I would have said, send him to the glue pen. He's not worth working on. But because something within me thought that I could fix this human, and he projected himself to be someone who would readily accept the help and change, I was stupid enough to say, okay, let's work on this. And honestly, the day he stopped trying was the day we got married. I almost immediately recognized behavior where he was done playing the role. And it was that quick. It was that quick. So, and honestly, I think he probably had been guilty of many things before that. This temp agency secretary, I probably just hadn't caught him. I was busy raising children and keeping care of a home and making meals and trying to stretch pennies into dollars and doing it pretty much on my own. So God knows what I overlooked because I was naive and did not readily pick up on malevolent behavior because I did not think in that way. I was ignorant to it, so I didn't. But now that I know, and I've dealt with felons and I've seen all this behavior and I've done counseling and I've worked with all these, I see all this. Now I go back in my head and I'm like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. Oh shoot, Elizabeth, what did you miss? And like, what was he doing? What life was he living while you were trying to make a happy home for him to come home to every evening? What was he actually doing? I will never know. I will never know. I will never ever know. Yeah, love is probably one of the worst things. It's how can you? I don't want to like scare you away from love because when you find listen, when a man worth fighting for will never make you fight. I learned that one the long way. Probably what sounds like a very simple, easy thing. It took me a long time to learn. But a man worth fighting for will never make you even have to envision that possibility. So, but I am glad that when the marriage fell apart. I'm glad I hurt because at least I know I had invested myself and I did love him and I was trying, and it did hurt me to lose that. And the coldness that I saw in him was what hurt me the most because he didn't seem like it bothered him at all to walk away from that. And the first thing when he said he wanted a divorce, the first thing that I thought of was my Nanny Clara, and they had been married like 68 years, and it was a big milestone. And I remember when we got married young, and I remember thinking, I'm gonna get married young enough, I might have a 68th anniversary, like Nanny Clara. I will not. I will not. Not unless my health makes a huge turnaround. I will not. But it made me mad because he had taken that opportunity away from me. So, and he didn't understand. He had gained so much in his little new relationship. He did not understand what he had then violently ripped away from me because it was all personal gain to him, he thought. And until he had consequences coming from the kids and the financial obligation, he really honestly did not feel the burn because I took care of all the overdraft debts. I cleaned all of that up. I mean, it took me 11 years to get him off of my background, my financial background. Oh my gosh, 11 years. So it was just rough. It was rough. But a man worth fighting for will never make you even envision that possibility. Never, ever. And you would think that being through that once, that I would be like a jealous lady or I would be constantly following my husband. I don't know. David is not that man. He's not that man. If a woman ever flirted with him, he'd be like, my wife will kill you. So you need to walk right out. He said, because we ain't going to play that. He's like, nope. And he's not that man. He'll be like, nope. And he would come home and he was like, listen, don't hurt her. But she flirted with me. I told her no. He's just not that man. But he doesn't even allow women the proximity to do that. He's a very kind man. And he's worked well with women in the factory jobs and the other jobs he's had, to the point where when they actually had men get sexual assault charges at the jobs, they took all the women from the factory and they said, who do you feel safe having as your supervisor on the shift? And they were like, David. They're like, David doesn't do this. I was very proud at that moment. I was like, thank you, women. I thank you. Like, that was big to me because I was like, I made a good decision, But he's just a very solid, good man. He would not even entertain that because he's built like me. That is one of his core intrinsic beliefs that he holds in there. It's like, you do not make that covenant with God and then thumb your nose at it and walk away and do something like that. So I don't think we don't have passcodes that each other doesn't know. Like, we have screen locks, but we all know each other's screen locks. And if I want to take a picture and my phone takes sucky pictures, I'll grab his phone and get it and take a picture. He doesn't. And I'll be like, grab my phone and see if so-and-so has texted me about that dog or something, And we just never, ever had that worry about each other. Ever, ever. And you would think that being in that past relationship, I would have carried. That's the one thing I did not carry forward. But somehow that money issue made it. I guess I worked too hard on the big things, but I did. I did figure out the other day that money issue had made it 23 years, and that I had not caught that one. And I really have tried to surgically just remove any of that first marriage from my life. I honestly really have. Anything that I think could cause me harm or could have tripped me and the children up, I really just tried to just extricate it. But you just never know what people are capable of, and you don't find out until it's too late. And so it's just make wise decisions with who you have children with, who you enter relationships with and have children with, and are supposed to trust, because you can't trust them all. Sadly, you can't trust them all, and it's your job to make sure that you find not perfection and not a dream relationship, but you find a partner in life that will value you equally. Because everything else is fluff. That it, if you don't have that foundation, then you're not going to have anything else. Because it has to be built on that foundation. But I have a good man now. Yeah, I try not to be jaded. Now, he makes me very angry. Like when 23 years later, when a real estate person calls me and he has not done what he was supposed to do 23 years prior, it makes me furious. And because I have to reach out and go, what have you done? Why is someone calling me and saying they can't find you and that I need to correct this issue? And he's like, well, don't be such a kid about it. And I was like, I'm amazed you can identify childish behavior because you've never hung around to raise one. And I am not a nice person to him. I'm not. And I hold his nose to it. When he causes me grief, I let him know he's caused me grief and he needs to not do it again. But he is so uncaring. He does not think about the ripple effect in life at all. He doesn't care if his behaviors hurt others. He only truly thinks about himself. And because of that, I had to constantly think 5 or 6 ways about how things could possibly come back and hurt my kids. And you don't want to have to sit down and do those things. You don't have to sit down for 3 hours and try to figure out how your ex-husband can come back and emotionally, mentally, physically, financially harm your children. You don't have to sit down and have to sift that one out. It's not pleasant. It's not something you want to do. But because his behavior was so horrible, I would have to try to stay preemptively 2 steps ahead of him at all times. And it just was horrible. It was horrible. And the sad thing is if he had just, even after the adoption, if he had just manned up and instead of like, when he got a new, like when they found out they were pregnant, then it made him think about the kids. And he was like, I would like to come see the kids. And I told him if he ever wanted to see the kids, he needed to call me. He called me one time. We met him that one time, but he got very mad at me. I said, well, we'll let you see him. We'll meet you. We'll pay for dinner. We'll buy dinner. You just enjoy the dinner, spend time with the kids. We'll stay quiet. You just have your, that's fine. And then if that goes well, we'll see what we can do next. We tried to be as, and he was like, well, I want to bring my wife. And I said, no. I said, at this point, I said, they have a new family. I said, they have a father. I said, you may at some point have a role in their life when they have questions for you. I said, but I just don't think she's going to be around. And I don't want my children, because they were tiny still. They were like, I think Elaine was in 3rd grade. I was like, I don't want my kids to be confused at this age and just constantly always seeing you with new women when you pop up every 5-6 years. And he got very mad. And he said, so you won't let her see them? And I said, no, but if you want to see them, you just call us and, we'll work on it. He said, you can't put those conditions on me. And I said, yes, I can. I said, you handed over your rights. You terminated any say-so you had in these children's lives. And I said, I have to think about this now. And I said, I'm trying to be nice. Well, you're not trying to be nice. And I said, let's just cut the bull crap. I said, I don't want her to have contact with my children. I don't believe she has the right mentality to have any kind of contact with these children. And I said, I don't think it's a long-term relationship, and I just don't think it's a good thing. And I said, I get to make that decision. And I said, honestly, if I said you couldn't see him unless it was a full moon and you danced in the middle of the highway in a pink tutu, I said, then that's the rules you have to meet because you gave away the right to make any. And then he was like, well, she said she was going to make me pay. I said, no. I said, yeah, he went out saying, I was going to make him do all that. And I was like, oh my God, he's such an idiot. He never called again. Now, his wife called several times, begging, pleading, and I said, no. No. I said, you can't think about my children now. I said, you should have thought about them before all of this occurred. I said, hindsight's 2020. And I said, I'm sure y'all feel real bad now. I said, but no. I said, you didn't think about them then. I said, I have no faith that you'll think about them now. I said, so I'm going to put a boundary wall up. And I said, he can see them. He can call us if he wants to see them. And I said, we'll work things out. I said, but no. I said, they do not need to know you. And he never called again. Until my son was graduating high school. And I get a call. And I answer the house phone, which I turned off shortly after this. I answered the house phone. And somebody said, Liz? And I went, I don't know. You called me. Because I'm a butthole. And he said, is this Liz? And I said, oh my God, why are you calling me? And he's like, oh, it is Liz. And I was like, why are you calling me? He's like, well, I have some good news. And I would love to have had like a video footage of my face at this time, because I was like, that I need to know because. And he's like, well, I've left my wife. And again, I need to know because, well, I thought you'd be happy. No, to my knowledge, y'all have a child. So now there's another kid in another failed marriage that you don't have a good track record with children. And now I'm worried about the kid. I don't really worry about her. She's an adult. I'm worried about this kid. And he's like, oh, God, I can't do anything right for you. And I was like, I don't really care what you do. I was like, I said, I didn't need to know this. And he was like, well, he's like, I know that he's fixing to graduate high school, and I'd like to come to. I thought maybe if I got my foot in the door and I made you feel kind of happy about I was leaving her. And I was like, I'm not happy that you're leaving her. I said, that makes both of you run amok on the world again to do damage again. I said, I just don't see this as a positive in any way. And he kind of laughed, and I said, why did you leave her? And he got really quiet, and I said, oh, you're seeing someone. Well, yeah, someone I met at work. Oh, gee, that sounds familiar. I know how the story ends. And he was like, well, I would like to come to the graduation. I was like, it's not up to me. I said, if he wants you there, that's fine. I said, I will be polite. I said, you can even come to the house after graduation and have pizza and drinks. I said, that's all we're going to do. And I said, but that's about all you're getting from me. I said, just about all. That's about. And he said, well, do you care if I bring my girlfriend? I said, I don't think it's a very kind thing to do, but I particularly do not care about anything you do now. I said, just think about what you're presenting to the children. He brought his girlfriend. I was polite. I was kind. I also got 3 or 4 phone calls that weekend and got cussed out. Because how dare I allow him to bring his girlfriend when I had such a problem when he had left me for her. And I was just like, listen, honey, it sucks. It hurts. It's, but you're going to be okay. You're going to feel like you took a 140-pound dump, and you're going to feel cleansed here very soon. Just hang on. It'll happen. And she was like, you don't even care about me. And I'm like, no, I don't. I care about as much for you as you did for me. I said, the thing is, I didn't interject myself into your marriage, and I don't have to care about you. Yeah. And I was like, do not call me back. And I turned off the house phone very shortly after that. I was like, As soon as our phone carrier would let us have internet without the house phone, I was like, done. Don't want it. And so the whole weekend that should have been happiness that my son had gotten through high school and graduated and was such a fine young man, was spent with me trying to walk around the side of the house, walk around the side of a building, have a woman scream at me crying so I could calm her down and shut her up, to then try to rejoin the celebration for my child without my child knowing any of this was occurring. And you can look at the pictures from his high school graduation and you can see the taxation on my face. And just the blind optimism on my ex-husband and his little girlfriend. Just the Twitter-pated idiocy. And even my son was like, I can't believe he brought his girlfriend. He's like, the reason he was not my father was because he got a girlfriend that became his wife, and then he did it to the next wife, and he got a girlfriend, and he brought the girlfriend. And I was like, it concerns me too. So I'm glad you see that. I said he's an adult, she's an adult. It's a public function. I can't tell him who he can or can't travel with or bring to a public function. So I did ask him to say, to think about how this was going to present to the children. And I said, you see what you got. And he was like, yeah, But then again, twist of fate, when they turn into adults, they have a different thinking mechanism and they have to go through things and work things out. And I, as the parent that's constantly been the foundation, it's just, oh, well, she'll always be there, and I know I've counseled enough kids in this issue to understand they seek out the other parent because they have a hope that they are something that they believe them to be, because there is an open blank hope there, and that's exciting for them, because the other parent has been there for everything and has been the provider, the disciplinarian. There is no secrets. There is no, what you get. You know who that parent is. And so the unknown is exciting and full of what they hope to be opportunities and optimism. Very rarely does it work out well, but I at the same time have to sit here and go, they have to work through it. I cannot work through it for them, and I cannot force them to work through it in a way that it's going to satisfy me, because that's not going to be right for them. And so I'm just sitting back hoping everybody goes back to the life lessons that I taught them and, eventually makes good decisions. So, but yeah, it's been hard. It's been very difficult. It's been very difficult. That's why I get on here and talk about this. So young people that follow me, pay attention. Do not shackle yourself to a turd. Instead, go to the Etsy shop and buy one of these and do this to any boy that wants to treat you poorly. Kiss my butt. So everybody, I like about every third or fourth Valentine's Day, I have enough new subs that they're like, what does everybody ooh and ah about how you met David? And I'm like, okay, we'll tell a story. That's like literally my entire life there in that story. And why I've worked so hard and put myself through school and probably burn out my body. And that's probably why I sit here with, I didn't recuperate from that injury that I had at the wilderness camp very well, and never really could take a lot of time to heal. I needed to be working, needed to be going. And then finally my body was like, excuse me, we're done, So my neuromuscular disorder was just like, too much, can't do it anymore. So that's why now I'm at the point with this neuromuscular disorder where it's attacking organs. So I've given up about every voluntary organ you can at this point. I'm running out of them. And we don't know what it's going to attack next. It normally takes about 7 to 8 years to move on to another organ. Once we normally offer one up, I normally get a 3 to 5 year like plateau where I kind of hold. And so we're hoping that after we get this thyroid taken care of, I'll get another plateau before it moves on to something else. But we're starting to get down to the serious organs. So, but also, I'm 20 plus years into this diagnosis, and I've outlived almost everyone in my region that has this diagnosis. So, and my quality of life has gotten to a place where I've found balance again because I'm not pushing myself and driving 3 and 4 hours on top of a work day, and because I was in the hospital about once every 4 to 6 weeks the last 2 years I was working because my health was just precarious. So I'm just I don't give up, and so to quit felt like giving up. And I had literally had to have a doctor say, "You're going to kill yourself overworking yourself like this." He's like, "If you continue to work these hours and put this stress on your body that is having a hard time functioning already," he's like, "this is not going to end well." And that's when I finally was like, "Oh crap, I've got to pay attention." It was very difficult. It was very difficult because I loved what I did. I loved to help people. I loved what I did. Um, it was very difficult to walk away from something that I had worked so hard to be able to do. And I had like plans. Like I was my hopes was to be working in the forensic psychology of basically the whole southeastern like penal system. I was going to work for prisons and like redesign their assessment and population protocol to make sure that um, we could reduce like gang issues. We could reduce the societal issues that could be replicated and then worsened in custody. We needed to cut those behaviors down, keep people safe, create a better society within a society so that these people could use the resources, take the education classes, feel safe enough to, think about their future and turn a prison into a place where they felt they had 5 minutes to breathe and maybe prepare for a better life rather than just trying to stay alive while in there. And I really wanted to do that. And I was so close. So close. So, but I can't fuss because, like I said, I'm 20 plus years with this disorder and I've outlived everyone that's been diagnosed alongside of me. So I'm not going to fuss. But life is a bowl of surprises. Not all of them are good, but you can find something good about most of them. Um, so even though I'm sick and stuff, I have done much better than most people with this disorder. So I can't fuss. I can't fuss. I mean, I would if somebody would like let me, but really there's no point to it. Oh Lord, wait, we've got a contempt of court charge. What? Oh yeah, a lot of courts, especially in like well, family court's getting better now. Family court is actually one of the harsher courts. But like in these lower level civil courts for like divorces and stuff, it's really hard for you to go back and hold up the court order, that y'all agreed to and go, didn't do it, fix this. Because it is civil. They want you to go through the money racket of getting another lawyer, doing an appeal, bringing it for another judge, and it turns into a financial issue at that point. And so it we have a lot of finessing that has been done to our judicial system since it was birthed, and it has been twisted in ways it should not have been twisted. We'll just say that, to where it doesn't do what it should do anymore. So yeah, there's a lot of people that slip through the cracks and get away with a lot of stuff. And there's the split of the civil and criminal courts um, does create kind of a stasis mode for a lot of people to be able to do a lot of things, hurt a lot of people, and really never have a consequence. Because half of them, when they have a financial consequence, just go and file bankruptcy. So it's not like they ever really feel a repercussion for their behaviors. So there's a lot that goes on that shouldn't go on, and that's why it's so important to screen people much better than even I did. I'm pretty good now. I was not when I was young. Well, thanks for coming in. I appreciate you. It's nice. I know that I've got a lot of new subs right now, and I know a lot of them are like, you know, one of the biggest questions I get is, how did you form your beliefs, or what led you up to having these perspectives on life and these expectations of yourself and others, and a lot of it was the culmination of going through my first marriage and then having to restructure myself so that I hopefully wouldn't carry that failure into my second marriage. And so I've been married again now for 23, almost 24 years. So I'm good. But it was difficult. And like I said, there's still little ways that it shows up, and that you can still see the trauma that I went through. And I don't always identify them myself. So it's nice, for me to get on here and say, as thorough as I was, stuff still slipped through the cracks. And that's why I can't stress that it's so important to pay attention when you're young to who you are around, because you will start to act like them, behave like them, approve things that they would approve, adopt their ideologies. And before you know it, you will become them, because one person will always caveat to the other. And that when I realized that, I was mad at myself, because I used to halter break 800-pound bull calves, and yet I had just been whipped by 140 pounds soaking wet, and it made me mad. So I had to sit down and do a lot of thorough reflection, and I just had to realize that I was a ply blank idiot when I was young. I was too well, I won't say protected, because you need to be protected, but I was not allowed to understand certain things in society that I needed to understand to be successful at choosing a proper partner, because I had been very isolated into a specific bubble and community, and I thought everyone lived and believed like that. And so, like I said, the biggest brain fart years were from 18 to 24. It kind of holds true for everybody, because you're going to find whatever you are the worst at is going to present at that time, because that's when you're trying to create your own life, establish yourself away from your parental units, create your own identity, your own beliefs, and you're going to find the holes in your theories, but often you don't find them until there's damage that's been done. So that 18 to 24-year-old gap where your brain is trying to do the last of the formation, but it's still not completely formed, and we're not running on all cylinders, okay? And all our spark plugs are not firing. And so we need to take a moment and say, I need to mature a little bit more before I make a mature decision. And I didn't understand that, because I thought I was a very mature young lady. But there are other ways you need to be mature. And that's what I did not understand. You cannot be just an idiot and walk into this world and get out unscathed. And so I have tried to protect my children, but also offer them a realistic look at the world and its pitfalls, and hopefully help them create a navigational, some kind of navigational boundary system to where they will not find themselves in those cavernous pitfalls. And other than, just some little behavioral modification crap that I would like to see fixed, my kids are really, happy and successful. Other than, this, the inclination of, they need to figure out who their birth father was, personally, who he is. That's been the biggest hiccup we've had to face as a family, is their curiosity about somebody that I know is just going to hurt them, and I can't stop it. Can't stop it. Something they've got to go through. They've got to walk through it. I can't stop it. But it still, as a mother, it hurts you because I know what he's caused me for 30 years, and I know what he's going to cause them, and I don't want them to have to feel that, but I can't expect them to understand it without having experienced it. And so some learning environments hurt, especially. And you, as a parent, can't always stop that. It sucks. The door cameras, you can't. Okay, listen, there are hackers for like these Ring cameras and stuff that can break into these Ring cameras and stuff like that. I don't use when I use security systems, I don't use like one that relies on an external source. I use one that normally hardwires into my home. Or is specifically going to use like something that I have security over. Does that make sense? Because a lot of these subscription programs can be hacked into, and then the cameras can be hacked. And Ring cameras had a couple of issues like that where cameras have been hacked and people have had to be made aware that they've been compromised. So I'm really leery of a lot of that. So I'm old school. David used to do security wiring for a long time. And if you can just like wire your home, buy a camera, and get a really good DVR, then you can kind of secure your own home and have your own recordings. Get a really good DVR. It's kind of expensive, but a long-term subscription is expensive too. So we have kind of patched with that and a couple other ways to create a security grid around our home, because I sent people to prison for a long time. I have to be I have to be careful. So yeah, we have a pretty good security grid up here. Yeah, anything basically anything that has a motherboard can be hacked. Anything that reaches out can be reached into. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So when I put something in and I wire a system to my home, I don't attach a DVR system. I don't attach to Wi-Fi. I don't attach to internet. I hardwire the cameras in to my home, my electric. I buy a DVR, and you just keep upgrading your DVR, and you save 30 to 60 days of video at a time. So if something happens, you can go back and pull it. And then you just keep cleaning your DVR and then upgrade your DVR and then clean you. And so that's a pretty secure system right there, because it doesn't reach out, it doesn't feed out, so nothing can feed in. And if you're going to buy a camera, try to buy one that does not use a subscription program, that has like a free program to where you can also choose to back up the video in an alternate way without needing a subscription program, because that subscription program gives them a lot of open terms and conditions over you and your videos and the instrument itself. But like, I would never put like a nanny cam up somewhere attached to Wi-Fi. Heck no, techno, no. I have a really good security perimeter, and I know if someone's going to be in or out of my home. If you get in the home, then your problem is me, and we'll have a problem. But other than that, we know if a blade of grass moves. As David said the other day on his thing. But does he know where the toothpick holder is in this house? No. Married 23 years. Toothpicks have always sat on top of the stove. He needed to know where they were last week when I was sick. Men. Yeah, the whole thing about Ring cameras so you can view it. But the fact that you can feed into it means that someone else can hack into it because it's not very secure. Now they swear they're secure, but they've been hacked a few times and had to tell everybody, sorry, somebody got in and was accessing cameras. Now you can go if you want to learn the deep and dark and dirty secrets, you can go online and watch these hackers that go in and they hack public cameras, home cameras, PlayStation cameras. And you can learn a lot because those hackers, when they put on a mask and they want to show you how smart they are, they will tell on themselves because they are braggadocious little egotistical idiots. And they'll just be like, look what I can do. And, they normally get caught soon after that. Because once you can identify the pattern behavior, you can then catch somebody. So then you can educate yourself on that if you want to. That's why the DVR system was, for us, the best option. Now, when it came to needing something that we could check on stuff, like if I'm down on the end of the mountain or something, we were very picky about how we did the grid externally. And you kind of have to do your own research about how they violate those cameras so that you can then understand how you can make yourself the safest, which is probably not words I can say on here without a video being flagged, sadly. Oh yeah, I have really, every time I see somebody put up a Ring camera, and like you go to these cul-de-sacs, and when I would do home visits in rich neighborhoods, where somebody would have their nephew living with them after he got out of prison, you'd see these Ring cameras, and I was like, I bet you every cul-de-sac, and the only places they probably really don't know are the backwoods people that still say, "Listen, I am the security." That's probably the only places they reach. But I would say with Google Earth, public access cameras that overcatch, there's probably not much of the inhabited societal areas that can't be monitored, either publicly accessed or hacked into. Because public access cameras, you see Ryan Hall get into them all the time to monitor weather coming in. You can get into them too. I mean, public access cameras, you can go view at all times. Heck, there are eagles down on Dale Hollow that I can go watch 24/7. We watch them nest all winter. Now, do they know what's going to happen? No, they caught something or something walking below the nest down in the brush several years ago, and they're like, was it Bigfoot? I don't know what it was. Probably some fat guy hiking that got way out of bounds. But you never know what you're going to catch. People that sit around and watch those. Heck, they've got somewhere, I think in Sweden, where you can watch a fish cam because they have fish that migrate up the stream, but they don't want to keep the door open all the time because it allows the predator fish to also follow them. So you can watch the fish cam and push the button and open the door for the fish. And there are people that spend 20 hours a day pushing a button so fish can get through when they're migrating. Now, I'm probably not going to do that. I just not my thing. But there are some people that spend like 20 hours a day pushing buttons for a fish they can get through a door and migrate so that the predators can't follow them. And the government that created that program was smart because, I mean, after they installed it, there was very little cost to them to manage the migration of those fish and manage it effectively so that the predator does not emaciate the entire population. I mean, very smart. I mean, there's probably nothing underwater that that far. It's down like at the bottom of a dam where they have a little access channel. Yeah, a lot of people are not aware of all of this. No, they're not. No, they're not. And honestly, if I weren't so well structured and secure, I probably wouldn't be on this platform. But because I have to structure my life like this because of my career, my career, my jobs, um, it's not really a big change in what I had to do to, be somebody on YouTube and be somebody, you send somebody to prison. Anybody can, I'm already worried about people trying to find me with malicious intent. So, what's one or two more? But for a normal person, I would say be very, very cautious. And if I were going for a security system, I'd probably just do a DVR. And if you have to have one that you want to, access into, I would look at the hacking court cases and I would go to some major platforms and read the stories the hackers tell you themselves and start to build up my knowledge about how they use these cameras so that you can start to identify the cameras that they can't most easily use. Does that make sense? There's lots of things I can't say that will flag and they'll take my video down or give me a week off. They've done that before. So I have to be careful, which is stupid, but I have to be careful. I mean, we're talking about camera. My mama made me little fabric coasters. Aren't they cute? Well, Ryan Hall, y'all. I mean, he's just doing and what is, he's got people out on the road, but he can also effectively follow the weather and show you the storm through the cameras at like intersections and stuff. And those are public access cameras, so I mean, nobody's going to get in trouble for accessing those. You can go and access those. You just have to find, the portal that they allow you to do so through. Sometimes you may have to like register a username, but it's like you're allowed to do that. Public access cameras, anybody. It's just like a police report. It's public knowledge. So he is smart because he's got his people out there, but he can also use those cameras at the intersections to travel with that storm and show you that storm as it's going. So it's very smart, but it also should tell you that there's not very much of this earth that is a true mystery at this point. I mean, if to us there are, but to the people that know the big things, there's probably not. What else do you know? Spill your guts. I have to be careful. YouTube will flag me. Ryan's from literally just throw a rock. Throw a rock north. That's where Ryan's from. Good guy. Really good guy. Really good guy. I really love what he does, weather-wise, because I'm a weather nut. We have really weird weather here. If you follow me for a while, you understand that. And so I grew up very affected by and interested in weather, and so he's like one of my favorite guys. And then that Nate Schneider, N-H Snyder, Snyder, when he does live streams, he's really good too. Like he's a really good. He reads the radar really, really well, especially when it's a radar that's like kind of removed from the area. He's got a good eye on that. And where we are, we're between radars, so we're the farthest from one and the farthest. We're right in the middle, where we're the farthest from each radar, and so it's hard for them to read our area. So you have to know the wind patterns and how storms approach this mountain and the paths they take from different where they're coming from, and I think we might have one camera in town on the courthouse. No, I take that back. We have two because the phone company put up one on the water tower. Yes, because they have, with the phone company's cable channel, you can look at all the areas where the phone company is. You can look at the water towers or the city areas from the water towers. So I guess we probably have two. We have one in the courthouse and one from the water tower. But I mean, like, I don't think we have any more. No. But like in big areas, intersections, even residential intersections, they have, lights, cameras, because cops, it's very easy for cops to make revenue off those things, and they obviously overshoot, like they can't block out, so they're going to see anything that's in that camera scope. So if you live in a super urban or a moderately urban area that has, like, you're on the corner of a major four-way intersection or something, your house is probably going to be able to be seen by one of those cameras that's on that intersection if your city's wired up like most cities are, which is an easy feeling. You do? Okay, in the morning. Tell me how it goes. Please keep up with me. Did I tell you, did you see the first of this? My mastoid has acted up, and that's where I've been sick, and you can hear the drainage. I sound so much better today. But this one pulled a big stunt all the way down my neck. It was really bad this time. So we're doing better. I slept all day yesterday. So today I feel better. But it's just, apparently it's mastoiditis season, I guess. Also, for anybody that doesn't know, you have a bone behind your ear called a mastoid. If it gets infected, it can spread to your spinal cord and create meningitis and kill you. So please be careful if you ever get sore behind your ear on this big knob, or your neck becomes stiff and inflamed and you have an earache. Please go see a doctor, because it could be very serious. That's my public service announcement. Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, if you've got a weather link or something that you enjoy, or a decent channel, yeah, you can throw it in there. That's fine. Yeah, mine has not ever been right since I've had that big episode with it a few years ago. So, but I knew exactly as soon as I felt that first ache, I was like, oh no. And then within a day, it was all down the side of my neck back here. And I was like, oh crap, no. So, but at this point, I just kind of wave to the doctor's office, and they're like, darter, antibiotics. So that's what I've been dealing with. Well, with your mastoid, the infection is, because it's so close to your brainstem and your spinal cord, it's just super dangerous. And I'm in a little small town, and I still have like the little country doctor kind of vibe. So I'm not super worried about normal treatment like that. But now when I go to the big areas and see my specialists and stuff, I don't trust my specialist. I hold them at a distance, and I have to research them, and I kind of backtrack their path that they've taken with their education and where they've worked. And I kind of feel them out, because they're networked more heavily than these little podunk doctors. So, I mean, until I was out of high school, you could still go to the doctor's house after hours and get treated here, because we only had a few doctors. So he had an office in his house. If you got sick in the night, your parent could take you to his home. I was taken there twice in my childhood. And I just was like, very sick, but I was like, well, isn't this sweet? He's nice. I was very sick. But like, unless like if I just get a cold or something, no, I'm probably gonna I'm gonna look at, really good herbal teas, and I'm gonna look at, making a clove cinnamon kind of vitamin C boosting tea. I'm gonna make mullein tea for respiratory distress and stuff like that. And I keep all of that on hand, and I kind of deal with that myself. But boy, when you get an infection in your ear and then it starts spreading towards your spinal column and your brainstem, you kind of, and the first time the mastoiditis was really bad, I had confusion with it, because I had so much infection so close to my brain. And I was, oh gosh, I was in the ER 3 times with that bout and had home health to get through it. I had to have home health to get through it. So I had nurses that came once or twice a day to do antibiotic injections and check on me. And and for a long time after that, they monitored me on home health. And if like where I fell on Christmas, they asked if I wanted home health again, and I was like, no. It's like I knew I shouldn't have gone out that early. I just was too stupid and move. I used my legs too much too early, and I knew not to. I was like, I won't do it again. But if I have really big issues, I can call the doctor, and I have nurses, they'll refile back to the house to help. But I think I'm doing okay right now. And when I was really sick with my thyroid, and I stayed at mom and dad's full time, and y'all know I'm just kind of nomadic. If I'm really sick, I will still go and stay full time with mom and dad, because when I'm really sick, we will kind of babysit each other because David is always at work. And so I still, if I'm still going to go to mom and dad's if I'm really sick. The reason I hadn't been there very much with Luna is because Luna's behavior was not conducive to mom being on a cane, and I just didn't want her to knock mom down. And but as soon as I get cleared up, I've got to go down the mountain, because we're prepping for all these surgeries and stuff, and I've got some stuff that I need to get done with mom's sewing machines and stuff. I'm going to sew a few things and do a few things I need to get done before we hit the hiccups of all these surgeries. So I'll probably be down there next week and doing some stuff. But Chelsea, I appreciate you hanging out. I know that when I have sickness and illness and y'all don't see me for a while and y'all don't know where I am, sometimes I've had to go down and stay with mom and dad because I've been ill. And sometimes I've just had to hang out here. Or if I have tachycardia, they ask me to stay up here because I'm closer to the ER. But I've not really had any tachycardia lately with this thyroid. I've been okay. But with the surgeries and stuff that mom and dad are facing, I will primarily probably be down the mountain most of the late spring and summer. And honestly, just kind of as kind of life goes on, I will just kind of be between both places for my health and their health, probably, from now on. And that's fine. Thanks for jumping in, Seven. I appreciate you. Okay, well, I'm gonna get off here. I've had a long chit chat with you. It's a long visit. It's been nice. I know some people don't understand my channel. It's kind of a live and learn, and if you've not lived and learned, let me tell you what to expect by my mistakes. And we are really a family unit. We do care about each other. So it's nice. I know when I'm gone for a long time, you're like, "Oh gosh, she's sick." I haven't accomplished a whole lot. Snoopy is sitting right there staring at me like a 5-year-old. And I've got Woodstock. I just need to assemble him and do his wings and his tail. And I'm hoping to get that one in the mail soon. But I've just not accomplished a lot because I've been so puny. And once my mastoid kicked it, I was like, well, crap. And I knew I just had to rest and let it heal. So I just kind of retracted. And I helped David edit one video. And I edited the whole video from the bed because I was so sick. But that's all I've done. And I've crocheted just. It took me how long to do, like a week or so to do Snoopy, because I was just not up that much. And I only crocheted when I was up. And I was just like, no, I'm tired. I'm sick. I'm laying back down. So I've watched a lot of Man Tracker on YouTube. If you've not watched Man Tracker, you should watch Man Tracker. Man Tracker, what else have I watched? I like to watch Fearfully Created. She cracks me up when I don't feel good. Watched a lot of crochet videos, a lot of Just Vintage Crochet, a lot of Canterbury Cottage, the crafting and stuff. what is it? Thrilled Thrifter. She's kind of funny. I just went through a lot of channels I hadn't kind of been caught up on and caught up on them. Watched some TV shows from the old time just to have background noise so I could doze. That's about all I've done. I know it's kind of like they're like that's a hard lesson for somebody to hear on Valentine's Day. I know, around the Valentine's celebration time. It's also the time when younger people will actually listen. So if I do retell it, and I've had a lot of people that David puts a lot more videos on here than I do, at this point, and so they're like, "What's the deal?" And they don't know the whole backstory. So I thought it's about time to do that again because we had a lot of people with questions about it. So I was like, okay, it's time to do the backstory again. So, but I'm going to make some dinner. I'm going to make a British dinner tonight. It's got sausage links, baked beans, over garlic toast, and with a fried egg on top. I know that sounds horrible, but for some reason it's really good. You can blame Peter Freestone for that one. He dared me to try it. It's a really good recipe, and I have been craving it. Probably where I've just been peaking sick. For some reason, I'm craving that, and I'm gonna make it and eat it. That's what we're having for dinner. And then I'm probably gonna go back to bed and sleep. But I've enjoyed catching up with you and making the frog. So I'm gonna have David probably put this in the Etsy store. So the Etsy store is Hillbilly Heart Decor. So if you want to buy him from David, I only charge $20 for these little guys because they take me a while to make because the 4-weight yarn in there that's a lot to make. But I'm like, as long as David buys me yarn, and I can throw him something every once in a while to say, see, you don't lose money buying me all that yarn. Then he will keep buying me yarn. That's the plan. So I'll try to have him put on Etsy. David's supposed to have tomorrow off, so I'll try to have him put on Etsy by tomorrow. So you can go and Google. He normally puts "Kiss Your Butt Frog" in the description with these guys. Woo! But so you can just Google "Kiss Your Butt Frog" on Etsy to find them. Woo! And their little fingers do uncurl after a while, but they're brand new. They haven't uncurled yet. Woo! I appreciate you. Y'all are family. And sometimes if a teenager will not hear your story or will not listen to you give a warning, send them to this link and let them hear it from me. Because they know that I don't have any bias in on their life. And I'm not trying to finagle. I don't know them. But just listen to a random stranger and what they've gone through because of not making wise decisions in relationships. So it's gonna help other people. This frog's cracking me up. Jane Fonda, exercise. Okay, I'm getting slap happy now. I'm gonna go cook dinner. I love you guys. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And it's been a very quiet Sunday here. I'm gonna try to enjoy tomorrow, and hopefully I will continue to feel better. And I will certainly update you if I do. Probably still gonna be sleeping a lot, but you'll see more of me as I pull out of this. Going to be down the mountain a lot. Going to be going to appointments with mom, so expect to get updates from them as well. And we'll all get caught up here very soon. Winter just bogged me down, but we're getting through it. We're getting through it. If we can get through March, I have high hopes that we normally don't see snow after Easter. Knock on wood. Knock on wood. So hopefully if we can get through March, maybe I will have made it through another winter and my health will start picking back up again to where I can do a little bit more and stuff. But right now, like when I do have my next really good day, I've got a lot of stuff I'm going to get caught up on. And I may just set up a time-lapse video so you can watch me, but I know that I probably won't be able to live stream the crafting because I'm just going to have to get to it and get it done. So, but I may do time-lapse videos for you, so you can see kind of what I'm doing. I'll do everything I can. So that's what we're looking at, and everybody that's sick right now, y'all just, if you need prayer, if you need somebody to talk to, reach out in the comments below. We got a really good group here, and we care about each other. So to the person about the dog seizures, I will be checking my emails as soon as I get done with dinner, and I'll get back with you. And everybody else, I will see you the next time I feel like sitting down and having a long chit chat. Next one won't be this long. Today was a special day. Bye, guys.